videos about the Marvel Universe, starting with the top 10 superheroes. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 276. And they seem to be watching Scott fight with a big fat man. Whoops. Amid people cheering. Scott took several deep breaths to eliminate the fear in your heart. Just when he was preparing to fight the fat man in front of him who weighed several hundred kilograms. Boom. There was a dull impact, and the fat man in front of him, known as Taozi, punched him directly in the face. The huge impact made him take a few steps back instantly, and at the same time he covered his face in pain and let out a wailing sound. Do you like it? I'm just asking you. Do you like this punch? Come on horseback, even though the big fat man in front of him kept provoking him. Scott also showed no sign of weakness. Then he suddenly pounced on the fat man and punched him in the belly. But it's obvious it has no effect. Instead, his hand suffered a huge reaction and started to hurt. Is this a superhero? He can't even beat a fat criminal. Maybe he will be disabled before he gets out of prison. I thought he became Ant-Man because of his outstanding performance in prison, but I didn't expect that he was still fighting. Hell, it seems I still paid the wrong thing, and this guy is still in jail. Then, how did he become Ant-Man? I'm getting more and more curious. Countless people were very disappointed. They originally thought Scott would do well in prison. Only then will he obtain the qualification of Ant-Man by accident. But they were wrong. Not so. I couldn't help but feel even more curious. How did this guy who wanted strength but not strength, and money but not money, become Ant-Man? At this time the music becomes extremely passionate. Scott unexpectedly distracted the fat man in front of him and took the opportunity to punch him. The surrounding people cheered as if they were celebrating something. I'm going to miss you, Scott. I'll miss you too, Taozi. You guys have such a strange farewell ceremony. Scott shook hands with everyone one by one. He smiled bitterly and looked around. Sighed deeply. Years of imprisonment finally ended today. He couldn't wait to see his baby girl. So he is very excited now and wants to leave this ghost place now. See this scene. The expectations of countless people, which were originally like stagnant water, miraculously began to surge. Because they are just realizing it now. It turns out Scott wasn't fighting this gang. It's a special farewell ceremony for these inmates. That is to say, Scott obtained Ant-Man's technology outside of prison. Then why? At this time Nick Fury, who was watching the video, also frowned. Decide to tell the truth, because your father copied Hank Pym's particles without authorization, and Hank Pym's wife died during the mission. Hank Pym hid this technology and did not disclose it to the public. So how did this guy who had just been released from prison obtain this technology? Things are getting interesting. My father, Nick Fury's words were clearly directed at Tony Stark. And the latter is also very clear in the previous video. He and Captain America traveled to the past and stole Hank Pym's particles at the same time. He also met his father, so it's not surprising to know that the two of them work together for SHIELD. But he never thought about it. His father actually had such an unpleasant past with Hank Pym, but he also understands his father has always sacrificed everything for human technology. And Pym particles are such epoch-making things. How could you not be moved if you can? He now wants to acquire this technology. Paired with his own steel armor, it's almost invincible. Okay, but he was also curious now. Now that I have made up my mind to hide Ant-Man's technology. So how did Scott get this? Maybe he stole this Ant-Man technology. Don't forget, he is a master thief. I checked the information and found out that this guy hacked into the most advanced security system at the time. It proves that in addition to being a master thief, this guy also has good technology. Just when the little spider had an idea. Natasha found the records from that time. This confirms little spider's conjecture from the side. Maybe it was really stolen. It's impossible. Let's not talk about how Scott knew Ant-Man's technology. It's even more impossible for someone like Hank Pym, who doesn't want his technology to be stolen, to be able to get it easily. This technology, drive. Banner retorted. As a scientist. Treat your research results like your own children. Cherish them even more. You couldn't be careless enough to have it stolen by a thief. So there must be something they don't know. Hear the words. Everyone fell into deep thought again. And he became very interested in this thief. He has no connection to Hank Pym. How did you get this technology? It's not just them. Others in the universe who are watching the video are also looking forward to it. Video continues with casual holiday style music playing. Scott got into the car of his steadfast friend in prison, Louis, and left. On the road. They chatted for a while. But when Louis said that some friends introduced him to him. He decisively rejected it. Not interested in. Come on, no, seriously, I don't want to go to jail anymore. I still have a daughter to take care of. Here. Scott's answer. Louis was very frustrated. But people who are watching the video find it very gratifying. Unexpectedly, Scott has changed his mind and decided to start a new life. Not bad. Very good. It seems like things are moving in a good direction. You know it's hard for people with criminal records to find jobs, right, dude? I have a master's degree in electrical engineering. Okay, there must be no problem, Scott said very proudly. It was as if his eyes were vigorously refuting Louis's words. Although he has a criminal record. Zero ask for flowers, but at least he has a high diploma. How could it be difficult to find a job? What a joke. Huh. When the camera zoomed in on Scott's proud face. The silky transition appears again. I saw that his originally arrogant face instantly turned into an emotionless machine. And he opened his mouth and said. Chapter 277. Welcome to Bath Robbins. Would you like to try our mango fruit storm? Scott finished his words. The camera slowly zooms out. I saw him wearing a pink t-shirt and a blue hat, standing in front of the bar and asking softly, "Good guy. Didn't you just say that you have a master's degree in electrical engineering? How did you become an ice cream shop clerk?" Ha ha ha. The slap in the face made such a loud sound. I have a master's degree in electrical engineering, but he ended up working as an ice cream shop clerk. It really made me laugh. You are the only one with a master's degree in electrical engineering, right? Why don't you become a shop assistant? Awkward. Very embarrassing. At this time, Scott saw that he had become an ice cream shop clerk after being released from prison. It's so embarrassing that you can dig out 3 bedrooms and 1 living room. I closed my eyes and didn't want to admit that this was me. But Louis on the side was not so kind. He started laughing directly and said, "Ha ha ha, buddy, let me just say it's hard to find a job. You also said you have a master's degree in electrical engineering. I panicked just now and was wondering if you really found a good job. The result, it turned out to be an ice cream shop store clerk. You're going to laugh me to death. Man, I bet you'll quit working in 3 days." Zero. Louis smiled heartlessly. Scott was even more embarrassed. Then he said, "Believe it or not, I can definitely last for a week." Scott is very confident about himself. After being released from prison in the video. He has already washed his hands in a golden basin and changed his mind. How is it possible that I can't even be a small shop assistant? What a joke. Is it shameful for a master's degree in electrical engineering to work as an ice cream shop clerk? He doesn't think so, but at this moment. The background music changed from cheerful and relaxed to slow and heavy. Like the prelude to a storm. The audience who had been laughing at Scott just now felt bad. They all stopped what they were doing, wanting to know what was going to happen. Only seen in the video. While Scott was still greeting guests, I was called to the office by the manager. As a result, he was fired on the spot. Silence. Speechless. I originally thought that Scott would be able to live a normal life after washing his hands, but unexpectedly, he was fired because of his criminal record. In particular, Scott's words, "No one wants to hire me," made people start to worry. If no one wants to hire him, wouldn't that mean we can only go back to our old business? This doesn't look like the rhythm of becoming a superhero. Wait, got fired? I thought he could have a stable job. No, didn't you agree to have a master's degree in electrical engineering? Why is no one hiring? So what kind of evil thing did Scott do? If I remember correctly, it should be theft, and the amount is not small, so. This guy can't even find a normal job, how can he become a superhero? This rhythm is a bit wrong. Could he be returning to his old career with the inmate? But, just when countless people began to worry. The background music also became low and hollow. It's like being in a swamp. While struggling in my heart, I'm descending rapidly, and I even feel suffocated. Although Scott is a thief, he is essentially a kind and good man. After several years of prison life, he decided to wash his hands of the crime, dock the thief ship, and live a normal life. But the wave of facts kept pushing his ship farther away. Unable to work normally, he decided to return to his old career, but he also fell into an even more terrifying whirlpool. The second generation of Ant-Man will also be born from this born. When Lin Lan's deep voice sounded. The person who was still worried about Scott just now felt a thump in his heart. It's exactly what they thought. Scott is really back to his old business. But what shocked and surprised them at the same time was that Scott turned out to be the second generation Ant-Man. Because he returned to his old career, their anticipation reached its peak at this moment. What exactly happened next? Factory 164. Scott returned to his old business and actually stole Hank Pym. Shit. Do I have to go back to my old job? This is too fast. At this time. Scott's exclamation echoed throughout the space. There was also depression and surprise in his words. He never expected it. He actually returned to his old career so quickly. It was a slap in the face. Originally, he thought that his daughter would be better off if she could see him washing his hands in a golden basin in the future. Maybe his ex-wife will also allow him to visit his daughter often. But who can think of it? Not only did I not change, but I went back to my old ways. But what surprised him even more. He actually became Ant-Man because he returned to his old career. Why is this? You should feel happy. The author has said that you are a good person, and many people don't know about your heroic deeds. Maybe the subsequent video will also expose your heroic deeds, and your daughter will definitely be able to see it. Yes. And she will be proud of becoming a superhero. Go, go, go. It's not because of you. If I go back to my old business later, you will definitely be involved. Scott complained. But Louis spoke to his heart. That's right. Although he was forced to go to jail for the crime of theft. But few people know the truth. Because I didn't want to see those people being cheated, I hacked into the company's security system and returned the cheated money to those poor people. That's why he was caught. In any case, it can be regarded as robbing the rich and giving to the poor just because he was not willing to speak out about the 640 office. Many people did not know the truth. And he had no chance to tell his daughter. But you are right. My sweetheart will definitely see it. Scott's eyes lit up. What he cares about most is his baby daughter. I can't help but look forward to the video clarifying myself and looking forward to how I became Ant-Man and how I became a superhero. All of this is like ants crawling back and forth on my heart, itching extremely unbearably. So keep watching with Louis, accompanied by sad music. Video continues at this point. After Scott was fired, he returned to inmate Louis' apartment. But except Louis, two new faces that I had never seen before came into view. See here. You don't need to think too much to know that these two must be friends that Louis wants to introduce to Scott. That's Kurt. He spent 5 years in prison and is a computer genius. Louis was making breakfast while still introducing. Out of courtesy. Scott sat between them and greeted them friendly. To be honest, he didn't really want to deal with them. Because he has now made up his mind to wash his hands of himself, and he cannot continue to follow the same old path. Well, done to Vista. Just when a few people got acquainted. In addition to Kurt, another guy named David said to Scott. The tone was full of respect. There seemed to be a hint of admiration. Hear the words. Kurt also said, Vistana, I've heard about this robbery. Strictly speaking, I didn't rob them. Robbery includes intimidation. I hate violence. I stole from them. I was a snitch, so you are a coward. Chapter 278. David put away his respect point compared to stealing point. He prefers the masculine behavior of robbery point. But before Scott could figure out how to refute point, Louis on the side brought the food and explained they were charging customers exorbitant amounts of money, which amounted to millions of dollars. He exposed it and got fired. Guess what he did next? He hacked into the security system and transferred millions of dollars back. He robbed the accounts of those who were defrauded, put all the bank records online, and drove the guy's Bentley into the swimming pool. Lewis became more and more excited as he spoke point, but when he saw Scott's silent look point, I immediately realized that I had said the wrong thing point. Then he closed his mouth point, but this passage caused a sensation in the entire universe. It turns out that Scott is a thief who only steals from the rich to give to the poor. I thought he became a thief because he was poor, but I didn't expect it was because he couldn't stand this kind of scam. It's so surprising. Damn it, is Scott so awesome? Why does it feel like it doesn't look like what he did? Yes, he does look like a coward as David said, but this act of robbing the rich and giving to the poor is too manly, isn't it? I wrongly blamed Scott. Now I find that he really has the potential to become a hero. That's right. Maybe the whirlpool the author just mentioned in the narration didn't mean returning to his old career, but something else. I really look forward to what this guy will become. Very good, very good. Countless people's faces showed expressions of appreciation point after learning that Scott became a thief because he robbed the rich and gave to the poor. Everyone's senses have undergone tremendous changes again. They never expected it point. A weak looking guy point to be able to behave in such a manly manner. He might actually have the potential to become a hero. At this time point, Scott's ex-wife and husband, who is a police officer, were watching the video and saw this scene point. His face was full of shock and disbelief point. Although they knew that Scott was in prison for theft point, but they didn't know the details. After all, that company handled the matter in a short period of time point. In addition, Scott did not tell the truth personally point, so they still misunderstand Scott until now. I thought Scott really went to steal because he was short of money. I didn't expect. The ex-wife looked at the dimensional platform and whispered point, for the growth of my daughter. She left Scott Lang resolutely point, but she didn't expect that the man she hated would do such a heroic act point, and she thought it was extremely dirty. The husband, who is a policeman on the side, saw this scene point. My sense of Scott has also changed. I knew this little and would definitely become a hero. I said he was not what he seemed, and I was right. Now I'm looking forward to how he becomes Ant-Man more and more. Tony Stark crossed his arms in front of his chest point. I don't know why I feel so kind when I see Scott point. Perhaps it was because he was questioned before when he was on the hero list point. He felt he had an obligation to help Scott speak point. Turns out he was right. Although I haven't seen Scott save the world yet point, but this act alone is enough to be called a hero. So he fixed his gaze on Scott point. Keep reading. Why are you telling these two people my life story? What do you want? At this time point, when Louis finished speaking point, Scott's face didn't look right point. Questioned Louis because he clearly heard what Lewis meant point. It's like introducing his abilities to his teammates. The implication is that he was invited to join their team and have a big fight. My cousin had a perfect conversation with someone 2 weeks ago. No, Scott didn't even listen and just shook his head in refusal point. I even felt a little disappointed point. It was just as he thought point. Louis wanted to recruit him. No, 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 wait a minute. This person happens to be the kind of person you don't like. No, I'm done with it. I don't want to go to jail again. Retiring as a millionaire with a nice pension is the perfect goal for Scott Lang. I don't care. I won't do it. Very tough. Countless spectators saw this scene point. I couldn't help but admire Scott even more. First, rob the rich and give to the poor, and then not be tempted by money. This is simply what a hero should look like. Okay, maybe later, Scott must have applied for a job in Hank Pym's company and then was appreciated by Hank Pym and obtained the Ant-Man technology. Very good, very good. I can already imagine him washing his hands in a golden basin and meeting Hank Pym. Yes, he is an upright and kind man who is not tempted by money. Maybe Hank Pym likes this in him, so he is willing to hand over Ant-Man's technology and let him save the world. Yes, That must be the case. I can't wait to see Hank Pym meet him. Looking forward to it. Thinking about zero. Countless people have imagined what will happen next. The anticipation is crazy. Everyone is looking forward to Scott's golden basin washing his hands and rebuilding his glory. But at this moment the background music, which was invigorated by the excitement just now, dropped like a ball deflating. It makes countless people feel bad. Is there another reversal in this? The scene changes when Scott flatly rejected Louis. He was originally sitting at the table, but now he was sitting in a van. And he was holding a piece of paper tightly in his hand. It read, "It will be another 377 days until I see Kathy." When this scene came into people's eyes, the translucent screen appears again. With low, sad, lost music. In the translucent screen, a little girl appeared, wearing a longevity crown and smiling happily. But when Scott entered the birthday party, except for daughter Kathy, others were afraid to avoid it. Even his ex-wife and current husband issued eviction orders against him. And required him to pay child support. But now that he has just been released from prison and cannot find a job, how can he have money? I had no choice but to leave in despair. When the translucent screen disappears, countless people feel like they have something stuck in their throats. My heart suddenly sank. They know it now. It turns out Scott also has a daughter, and now that he has a criminal record, visiting his daughter has become a luxury. 377 days. This is simply harder than 10 years. And he also needs to pay child support. To make matters worse, the scene changes. Scott returned to the apartment from the car. I opened a bottle of wine and started drinking. Ignore the 3 Louises who are playing games. Chapter 279. Said directly, "Tell me about that job." "Oh, baby, it's starting. Act now." Louis slapped his thigh excitedly and suddenly jumped up from the stool. He was just waiting for Scott to say this. So I excitedly took a few people and started taking action. Silence. 1.3. Speechless. Everyone in the universe who was watching the video fell silent. Now they just feel their faces are burning. It was like being slapped hard. They never expected that the slap in the face would come so quickly. They were still feeling proud of this guy just now. Good guy. Did it start to mess up immediately? But for the sake of my daughter, it makes sense. But now countless people are confused again. Now that Scott is back to his old business, so what does it have to do with Hank Pym? But at this moment Louis named the target of the theft. He is an old man who owns a valuable safe and will be away from home this week. The scene changes. A huge surveillance room appeared in the video. However, when a familiar figure comes into people's eyes, countless people gasped, because of course that's Hank Pym, and it monitors the surroundings and interior of a house, not missing any corner. See this scene. Countless people suddenly realized it. Now they finally understand how Scott and Hank Pym are connected. It turns out that what Scott is going to steal this time is actually Hank Pym's thing, reminiscent of the subsequent Ant-Man suit. Can't help but think of it again. Could it be that Scott succeeded? The anticipation of countless people was instantly heightened. They want to know what happened next. 165. Hank Pym did it on purpose? It's really the Ant-Man suit. Oh my god, is he killing? He's going to steal Hank Pym's stuff. This is a sure way to die, and even if he steals it, there is no way to obtain Ant-Man's technology. Even my father cannot copy Pym particles. At this moment, when the Avengers figured out how Scott was connected to Hank Pym, they all found it incredible. Even a genius like Tony's father, it cannot be successfully copied based on the presence of Pym particles, not to mention Scott. Even if he has a master's degree in electrical engineering, could he be stronger than Howard Stark? Of course it's impossible, and most importantly, it is simply impossible for him to steal Hank Pym's things. If you can steal it. S. H. I. E. L. D has already done this. No, let's not talk about whether he stole Ant-Man's technology. Let's talk about how he knew this thing. Hank Pym hid Ant-Man's technology in the snow. No matter how much RSHIELD spent, no words can bring him back. At This time, Nick Fury frowned. Said it right. Ever since Hank Pym learned that Howard Stark was trying to replicate his Pym particles, I felt a huge crisis. What he is worried about is not that his technology will be plagiarized, but that this technology will cause even more terrifying disasters. That's right. That's why he resolutely decided to hide it. Even though S.H.I.E.L.D. sent one person after another to convince him. But still failed. As time goes by, fewer and fewer people know about Ant-Man, and even some videos are permanently sealed in S.H.I.E.L.D. secret files. So how did Scott and the others know? The thought of this, the others also frowned like Nick Fury. Still can't figure out why. At this time in the video, Scott also asked the questions they wanted to ask. Don't get excited. I want to know the source of the news. It must be absolutely reliable. Just when Louis slapped his thighs and jumped up from his seat, ready to have a big fight. See Scott so serious, so he also suppressed his smile and said quickly, I was at a wine tasting with my cousin Ernesto, and it was mostly red wine, and you know I don't like red wine, but there was this rose wine that saved the day. When Louis revealed the source. Countless people watching the video suddenly felt what a real chatterbox is, although there is a lot of nonsense. But Louis' words were always full of humor, make the originally boring narrative become interesting. After listening to Louis' very long speech, not only Scott understood it, but also the people watching the video understood that this news simply came through many people. It's not like the policeman deliberately spread the news to lure them into taking the bait. Scott heard this. I feel very at ease. Well, there's an old man. He has a safe, and he's going to be away for a week, so let's plan it like this. Just do it. Scott, Louis and others started preparations accompanied by cheerful rhythmic music. They obviously just met. But like a well-trained team, each has a clear division of labor and is very efficient. In the eyes of Scott and others, they are about to become famous, but in the eyes of the audience. But full of doubts, although these messages did not come from one person and were not like hooks set by the police. Why do I still smell a conspiracy? No. Why do I feel like this old man is Hank Pym? How could he not be home for a week? And how could anyone know that he has a safe at home? There are many doubts. People watching the video frowned. It feels like there is a hand behind everything. The Avengers members frowned even more tightly. They never expected it. This news actually went through so many people before reaching Scott. And this old man, as many people think, is Hank Pym. You know, he was also an agent of SHIELD. I have a safe at home. How could the news leak out unless, wait, I know. Hank Pym did this on purpose. At this time, Spider-Man exclaimed. Very excited. This made Tony and others around him very curious. What on earth did he know? Tell me, what did you find? What was it intentional? Bruce Banner holds down Spidey. Prevent him from jumping further, and Peter Parker, who had settled down, also expressed his thoughts directly. This must be Hank Pym's intention. He deliberately spread the word and waited for Scott to steal the safe. And I bet that there must be Ant-Man's technology or suit in the safe. This is also that's why Scott became the second generation Ant-Man, and combined with what the author said before, he was pushed into the whirlpool. Doesn't it fit in with this? Question mark? Chapter 280. On purpose? When everyone heard Peter Parker's words, they all had a sudden enlightenment. It seems that there is some truth. A careful man like Hank Pym. How could it be possible that, if the news leaked out, the thieves would take notice? And how did Scott become Ant-Man? Little Spider's statement perfectly explains these 2 points. It's really like this. This statement perfectly explains the 2 biggest questions in my mind. But why did Hank Pym do this on purpose? Although Tony Stark's doubts were eliminated. But a new doubt arose. That's why Hank Pym did what he did. Not even SHIELD has access to his technology. Why deliberately lure Scott into taking the bait and give him Ant-Man technology? This is a bit inexplicable. Perhaps there will be an explanation later. Otherwise I will be embarrassed. Tony Stark is feeling very uncomfortable right now. Even if his father wants to reproduce Pym particles to benefit the world, he can't. Why can a master's degree in electrical engineering be used? He is not convinced. He needs a video to give an explanation. Otherwise, he will really be embarrassed. Hear the words of Tony Stark. Everyone nodded, frowned, and looked at the dimensional platform, wanting to know why Hank Pym did this. Landline. Lines are cut. Cell phone signals are blocked. No one will call for help tonight. Communication. Check. Received. X2 at this time. The scene changes. I saw Scott and others sitting in the van, ready to go. Accompanied by slightly tense music. Countless viewers who were watching the video also became nervous. They have seen so many famous battle scenes. I have never seen anything stolen. Compared with before. I went back to the past to get gems. According to the circumstances, this kind of organized and strategic theft is even more attractive. I saw countless people holding their breaths, with questions in their minds, looking forward to the next operation of Scott and others. If something goes wrong, I'm still there. Don't worry, nothing will happen. When Louis comforted everyone. Scott responded confidently. In his heart. This kind of safe or something. It's all a piece of cake. After all, he is a thief with a master's degree in electrical engineering. I just like how conceited he is. Louis chuckled. Watched Scott get off the car. It also represents the beginning of planning. In video. Scott used his agility to climb the fence, climb the stairs, and then enter the house, all in one go. See this scene. The audience watching the video had to gasp in amazement. It's exactly what this guy said. What a snitch. Enter the house. Scott headed straight to the basement. And with the help of the key on the table and cabinet, the door was successfully opened. But who would have thought? When the wooden door is opened. A huge iron gate caught his eye. There's a fingerprint lock on the door. What? Ernesto didn't tell me this. Are we doomed? Lewis and others who were on sentry duty on the other side were all heartbroken. He even cursed the person who told them the news in his heart. If it's an ordinary lock, it's fine. It's a fingerprint lock. It's simply impossible to break it open. Not really. However, just when Lewis and the audience were disappointed. Scott was still so calm and collected. It makes countless people's hearts tremble. Is it possible that this guy still has a way to crack the fingerprint lock? I couldn't help but start to look forward to it. At this time. I saw Scott returning upstairs. We also found items such as transparent glue. The remaining fingerprints on the door handle were successfully engraved on the solidified glue. Then the fingerprint lock was opened. See this scene. Countless people had to praise Scott's top-notch stealing skills. An ordinary person would have given up long ago. But I didn't expect him to be as skillful, as if he had used it countless times. However, just when people thought it was finally time to reach the safe. Opened the door. Another iron door caught everyone's eyes. What the hell? Why is there another door? You're playing with me. Holy shit, I'm getting more and more curious now about what's in this safe. With these two doors, how did those people know there was a safe inside? Oh shit, you're right. How did the people who told them the news know it? Could it be this is really a conspiracy? That's right. These two doors alone have stumped countless thieves. 640. How could you possibly know that there is a safe inside unless the owner himself says it? Otherwise who can know? What's more, who would be stupid enough to reveal that there is a safe in their home? So now people conclude that this must be a conspiracy. Worrying and nervous, countless people fixed their gazes on Scott. Can't bear to see him go to jail again. But Scott in the video obviously didn't realize this problem. Instead, he just muttered lightly. They didn't finish laughing. This safe is quite safe. Scott was not stopped by another iron door in front of him. Instead, I had already figured out how to open the door. What are you doing? I pour water into the keyhole and freeze the water with nitrogen. The ice will expand, but the metal will not. When Louis asked. Scott was already standing at the previous door waiting. I saw that the thick iron door was quickly covered with a layer of ice. And nails kept flying out of it. Accompanied by a loud bang. The entire door fell directly onto the air mattress. Until now. Although countless people are very worried about Scott. But what's more is expectation. Looking forward to what is behind this door. When the camera zooms in on Scott. I saw him walking behind the iron gate. Chapter 281. What's in there? Cash? Jewelry? Nothing. Scott entered the room and looked around. I didn't see anything valuable like cash. What? Did you say, Lewis? And others waiting outside were also very shocked. I can't wait to come in and see it for myself. But how could Scott not be shocked? According to the source point, this old man is a millionaire. No cash. Damn it. Only one dress. I saw him shift his gaze to a box in front of him point. When the camera follows his gaze point, an extremely familiar piece of clothing caught everyone's eyes because that is the Ant-Man suit. Boom. This scene exploded across the entire universe like a bomb. No one expected it. Point hidden behind this safe is actually the Ant-Man suit. What exactly is this for? Point 166. Scott successfully turned into Ant-Man. Holy crap. Why is it the Ant-Man suit? What's going on? What's actually in this safe is the Ant-Man suit? How could Hank Pym put such a thing here? So confused. What exactly is this operation? Spider-Man. You will never guess it. Because Hank Pym deliberately seduced him. What? Deliberately seducing? Did Hank Pym do it on purpose? Wait, that does seem to explain this. But why did Hank Pym seduce Scott to steal the Ant-Man suit? That's not his baby. Good guy. Spider-Man, how come you can guess everything? You always tell the truth when we are most confused. You are as bad a learner as the author now. You know how to whet our appetite. Tell us why quickly. Spider-Man, I wonder why too, but one thing is for sure, Hank Pym needs Scott. At this moment point, just when countless people fell into deeper doubt, Spider-Man's words suddenly dawned on them. Point, that's right. Point, this looks like a bait. No matter how you look at it. Point, just to lure Scott into getting the contents of the safe. Point, but what no one expected was what awaits Scott is actually the Ant-Man suit. You know, this thing was considered a treasure by Hank Pym. Point, it's impossible to use this as bait. Then there is only one truth. Point, that's what Hank Pym needs Scott to get this Ant-Man suit to help him accomplish. The thought of this, countless people are looking forward to it even more. Point, what does Hank Pym need from Scott? I didn't expect that Hank Pym, who had hidden Ant-Man skills, would lure Scott here with such ulterior motives. Maybe he just took a fancy to his skills. Yes, and this safe is like a test. Don't forget that Hank Pym is monitoring all of this now. I'm very curious now. What kind of things happened to Hank Pym that made him take this step and willing to give his uniform to a thief? Don't forget, Scott robbed the rich and gave to the poor. Don't call him a thief. And he will also become a superhero. I'm sure of that. Just when countless viewers were discussing crazily. Point, the Avengers members on the other side also felt strong interest. Point, except for one person. Point, that's Tony Stark. Point, his face showed shock and frustration. Good guy, I didn't expect Hank Pym to lure Scott over to steal the Ant-Man suit like this. Even my father copied a Pym particle and immediately broke off the relationship. Is this looking down on our Stark family? Maybe that's the case. It's obvious that Hank Pym chose Scott, so he took out the Ant-Man suit. Nick Fury teased. Point, as director of SYNOPSIS, when I heard Spider-Gwen say that this was Hank Pym's intention. Point, I have already guessed that Hank Pym is selecting candidates as for why he asked Scott for help instead of S.H.I.E.L.D. Point, that must be because Hank Pym doesn't want Ant-Man's technology falling into the hands of S.H.I.E.L.D. Scott has no money, no job, and doesn't understand the existence of Ant-Man. Point, it must be his best choice. Point, the thought of this, Nick Fury's eyes lit up. Point, seems to understand something. Point, so he went on to say, perhaps Hank Pym is indeed, as they say, not only interested in Scott's identity, but also his thief skills. You mean Hank Pym wants Scott to steal things? It seems to be quite consistent with a tiny existence like Ant-Man. When Tony Stark responded. Point, others also nodded. Point, in this way, the idea will be very clear. Hank Pym took a fancy to Scott and sent out news waiting for him to steal, and then he obtained the Ant-Man suit. Point, the next step should be to contact Scott and ask him to help you. Point, the thought of this, everyone turned their attention to the dimensional platform, wanting to know whether their guesses were correct. Video continues. That's when the Avengers and the countless viewers watching the video guessed that it was Hank Pym who picked Scott. Point, Scott in the picture is very depressed. Point, it can be said that I'm so depressed that I want to vomit blood. Good guy. Point, in order to pay the child support for his daughter, he finally crossed this hurdle in his heart and decided to return to his old career. The results of it, the only thing in the millionaire's safe is this leather jacket. playing with me. It's all a waste of time, Scott. Side point. His face showed disappointment and depression. Point. Lewis and others who heard Scott's words outside also fell silent. Point. They felt very sorry for Scott. Point. Because they got the news unexpectedly. The greater the expectations, the greater the disappointment. In the end, there was nothing. The most important thing is that for this vote, Scott gave up his long-established determination, but who could have imagined that it would end like this? Good guy, this leather jacket is simply priceless, and they actually said that their work was in vain. I'll buy it for 100 million. That's right, it kills me. I can use this Ant-Man suit for even $1 million a day. These guys who have no eyesight. Woo woo woo. That's right. Point. See Scott's reaction. Point. Countless viewers who are watching the video feel very angry. Very angry. Even S.H.I.E.L.D. wants this Ant-Man suit. Point. Now you are telling me that all your hard work has been in vain. Joke. Don't give it to me. Although countless viewers are very envious, they know that if there were no author, they might be like Scott, completely unaware of such a small and mysterious existence as Ant-Man. I'm so sorry, Scott. I know you really need this job. Louis said apologetically. Point. And heard his words. Scott didn't answer. I can only accept my fate. Point. Then he took the Ant-Man suit and left. Point. After all, thieves never come home empty-handed. Point. Even a torn leather jacket. Point. Scott also felt the need to take it away. Point. The scene changes. Chapter 282. When Scott walked out of the door wearing the Ant-Man suit, the silky smoothness turned into the bathroom door in Louis' apartment. Point. I saw him wash his face, sweeping away the decadence, and then suddenly realized something. Point. Why would a millionaire lock this thing up, and using two such high-end doors? Say nothing. Point. Scott opened the bag. Point. He took out the motorcycle leather jacket that was worthless in his eyes. Put it on directly. This is so weird. After wearing Huggies, Scott stood in front of the mirror. I even felt stuffy and hot. Point. Then he looked down at his hands and found these two buttons on the top of his palms. Pressed the left hand. Point. No response. Point. He pressed his right hand. Point. Sudden, accompanied by passionate music. Point. In Scott's shocked eyes, he was shocked to find that his body had shrunk. Stand up. Point. Scott looked around the tub. Point. His face was full of shock and disbelief. Point. He couldn't believe that these clothes could actually make him look so small. Of the king. Oh my god. The camera follows Scott's gaze. Point. The originally very small bathtub seemed like a huge world, which made countless viewers watching the video widen their eyes. It was exactly what they thought. Point. Seeing the world from a zoomed in perspective is a unique experience. Very good. Very nice. But at this moment. Point. A familiar voice resounded. Seeing the world from this perspective is really different. Who is it? Who is talking? Scott panicked. Point. Until now, he was still too immersed in shock to react. Point. Now a strange voice is heard. Point. My heart was shaking suddenly, and I was extremely panicked. And viewers who are watching the video hear this sound. Point. He even took a breath of cold air and roared. Point. Because that's exactly what Hank Pym sounds like. It was exactly what they thought. Point. Hank Pym chose Scott, but what makes them even more curious is why Hank Pym chose Scott. Does Scott embark on the superhero journey from this moment on again? 167. Scott panicked and returned the Ant-Man suit. Is this Ant-Man's perspective? It's really amazing. At this moment. Point. Scott sat on top of the rubble. Point. There was a look of pride on his face. Point. Although he was ashamed of himself for returning to his old profession. Point. But it doesn't affect his desire to shout now. Point. Because he really became Ant-Man. Scott, I think the two of us in the video are so stupid. We actually said we left empty-handed. I don't know how much this suit is worth. If I can buy it for the Avengers, I can get billions of dollars at least. Exclamation mark. Hiss, it feels so good just thinking about it. Louis said this from the sidelines. A smile seemed to overflow. Point. He never expected it. Point. It turns out that it was after they returned to their old ways that Scott became Ant-Man. Point. Rounded up. Point. It's like he built the bridge for Scott to become Ant-Man. Point. It is equivalent to him being Scott's benefactor. The thought of this, Louis continued to joke. Maybe you should call me your benefactor. After all, without me, you wouldn't be Ant-Man. Scott rolled his eyes. The surrounding space seemed to be vibrating, making a clicking sound. Point. Lewis was so frightened that he waved his hand quickly and said, Scott, stop, stop, I was just joking. Perhaps the most important thing now is to figure out why Hank Pym chose you. What does he need you to do? Louis was scared. Point he took a few steps back. Point changed the subject to distract Scott, so he won't embarrass him. Point Louis words. Scott also nodded. Point in deep thought. Point that's right. Point Hank Pym gave the Ant-Man suit to himself this way. Point it is definitely not possible to show great mercy. Point that must be something you need to do yourself. Point and now after shrinking in the video, he hears Hank Pym's voice again, which is even more as expected. Next, 640 will see how he is connected with Hank Pym. Sure enough, it's true. Doesn't this mean that Hank Pym really wants Scott to steal something? The key is, what to steal? The other side. Point inside the Avengers, Tony Stark said slightly unhappy. Point Hank Pym has always been upset about the fact that he gave the Ant-Man suit to Scott. Point and knew that Hank Pym chose Scott because of his skills. But what he wanted to know was, what does Hank Pym need to steal with Scott? Could it be S.H.I.E.L.D.'s secret files? If something as big as an ant infiltrates, it might really succeed. Hawkeye Barton said. Point he still believes that the existence of Ant-Man is just for assassination and infiltration. Point however, Nick Fury, director of SHIELD, shook his head and said, no, he has been completely separated from S.H.I.E.L.D. a long time ago, so he can't be stealing S.H.I.E.L.D.'s things. Maybe it's something else. For example, is there anything else worth stealing by Hank Pym? That's right. Point no one thought there was anything worthy of Hank Pym stealing. Point if you want money, get money. Point if you need technology, you need technology. Point what else does he need? Maybe someone else needs his Pym particles, right? Doubtful, very doubtful. Point everyone frowned. Point I really can't think of it. Point it's like a needle stuck in your heart and you can't pull it out, even if you want to. Point so everyone looked at Spider-Man Peter Parker to see if this little clever guy had any ideas. What are you all looking at me doing? Peter Parker instinctively took a step back. Point after all, these demons always keep themselves quiet. Point as a result, his conditioned reflex is to retreat and shut up. Ahem. I know you can't guess that. Hank Pym asked Scott to steal something. It must be a very important thing, such as the Cosmic Cube or the Mind Scepter. Think about it. In the previous video, was it Ant-Man who kicked away the box containing the Rubik's Cube? He looked very skillful, and in addition, Hank Pym was at odds with S.H.I.E.L.D. In order to take revenge on God S.H.I.E.L.D., that will definitely require taking away S.H.I.E.L.D.'s most cherished thing. Peter Parker said seriously. Point it made everyone feel that there were more possibilities, but before they could confirm this conjecture. Point after all, Hank Pym did not lose his daughter Hope as in the previous video. Point so there is a high probability that he will not be hostile to S.H.I.E.L.D. Point but the same thing. Point Spider-Man's words made everyone feel a hint of crisis. Chapter 283. That's right. Point if Hank Pym is really like the previous video. Point if you plan to kill them, it might be really easy. No matter what he chose Scott to steal, this technology cannot be kept in Hank Pym's hands no matter what. If he really wants to kill us, it will be really easy. Tony Stark takes out the future notes. It says Hank Pym will come to you and hand over Ant-Man's technology. Point after finishing writing, he felt relieved. Point Nick Fury on the side wanted to stop it, but found that Tony Stark had finished writing. Point then he sighed and said, although we have sent people to monitor Hank since he resigned from SHIELD, and as he grows older, it has become difficult for him to use the Ant-Man suit. After all, the Ant-Man suit has serious side effects on people. But what I have to say is that if he cultivated the second generation of Ant-Man and decided to kill us like in the previous video, it would be really difficult to guard against it. I was not thinking about it. Nick Fury is now blaming himself. Point after a previous video of Hank Pym slaughtering the Avengers emerged. Point he should have thought of this, but he was addicted to these videos and couldn't stop himself. Point so now he plans to deal with Hank Pym's affairs properly. Point never allow those things to happen. So he turned around and left. Point heading to Pym Corporation. The people on the side continued to watch. Who is it? Who is talking? At this point Scott looked around. I was shocked by the shrinking thing. Point now a stranger's voice came to my ears. How could we not make him panic? But at this moment. Point the voice didn't answer his question. Point instead he continued. It's a test of fire, Scott, or water. The Words just fell. The background music is extremely tight and rapid. It's like a huge crisis is coming. Just when Scott was confused. The bathtub curtain was drawn open. Louis' figure came into his eyes and reached for the switch. Suddenly, water like a waterfall flowed out of the pipe and then set off a terrifying tsunami towards Scott. Shocking. Extremely shocking. This scene brought a huge visual impact to everyone. It can even be described as interesting. For the first time, they saw that the water flow that originally seemed so insignificant in their eyes, from Ant-Man's perspective, surged like a tsunami, directly rolled up Scott, and then blasted out of the bathtub. It fell heavily to the ground. Ding ding ding. When Scott hit the ground, he fell directly into the sewer and came to one space after another, avoiding one danger after another, screaming the whole time. It was clear he was terrified. After all, he is just like an ant now. Something that I once looked down upon or even looked down upon. Now he needs to look up, which makes him very uncomfortable. I was even praying in my heart. Be able to escape to a safe place quickly. Boom. The sound of breaking windows was heard. Scott flew straight out and landed on a car. Then I remembered something and pressed the button directly and it returned to normal size again. Whirring. Scott gasped for air. My heart was beating like there were countless people dancing inside. To be honest, he had never experienced anything so ridiculous. Not bad for a test drive. Keep your clothes on and I'll contact you. No. Thank you. Scott shook his head wildly. Like a person who has been greatly frightened. His face showed dullness and panic. What a joke. I was almost trampled to death by a disco dancer, almost killed by a vacuum cleaner, and almost killed by a mouse. You still ask me to save this dress? Damn it. The scene changes. Scott couldn't be more skillful in returning the clothes. Honestly, he didn't care what an awesome outfit it was for him. My life is at stake. See this scene. Countless viewers watching the video clenched their fists. They also wanted to see what Hank Pym wanted him to do. You don't want it, even if you say you don't want it. Sure enough, as David said, he is just a coward. You show me this. When I take off my pants, how exciting it is to be small. I have the ability to peek openly. You still don't want it. That's right. I was so excited. You coward. You actually gave the clothes back. You really pissed me off. I don't want it. If I don't want it, how can there be such a coward like you? At first, I said I would just leave empty-handed, but now that I know how awesome this dress is, I still choose to send it back. It seems like what David said. That's right. He's just a coward. How nice it is to give me this dress. Damn it. Then I can wander around without restraint. Maybe I can also go see the dense black forest, or explore the pink mine cave. You don't know anyway. Just when countless people were sighing with emotion. Scott in the video didn't hesitate. Done in one go. Straight out of Hank Pym's house. Without any nostalgia. I even felt lucky. I finally got rid of that dress. But who would have thought? Just came out. Countless lights. Come on. Get on the ground. You're under arrest. When countless police lights come on. The police's voice echoed throughout the space. Countless viewers knew that he was done for again. 168. This guy still chose Ant-Man and successfully escaped at %*. He actually went back. Damn it. You said he is a superhero? I don't believe it again. At this moment. Tony Stark said angrily. I even felt that Scott's behavior was a slap in his face. After all, that was what his father wanted. But in Scott's eyes, it is worthless, and the reaction after transforming into Ant-Man. It left him speechless. As long as a brave person transforms and shrinks, even if he is scared at the time, he will definitely find it very interesting when he transforms back and even feel that he can do many things. But what about Scott? He returned it without saying a word. It made Tony feel that this Scott was a bit unworthy. Mr. Stark, didn't you say before that you believed he was a superhero? Peter Parker scratched his head and said. I'm also a little confused inside. This guy's reaction was even greater than his own reaction to becoming Spider-Man. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 284. It's just that he and I are two opposite extremes. After he became Spider-Man, he began to try various difficult actions and this guy actually sent the Ant-Man suit back directly. This was something he didn't expect. This is not necessarily true. Judging from the fact that Hank Pym can call Scott's name, he must have paid attention to this guy very early and cannot let go. This also shows from the side that he really needs Scott. Do something for him. Hawkeye has always had his own intuition. Just like shooting an arrow yourself. Once you aim at the target, you will never miss it. But now that Scott has been caught again and has to go back to jail, will Hank Pym choose him? That's natural. Scott can even return something as magical and terrifying as the Ant-Man suit without hesitation, which shows that his inequality is absolutely passable. Combined with the previous robbery from the rich and giving to the poor, if I had Hank Pym, and I just feel like I really picked the right guy. Hawkeye explained again. For him, quality is what matters most. Ability is secondary. First, they rob the rich and give to the poor. In the end, he got the Ant-Man suit, an artifact that allowed him to do whatever he wanted and still returned it. It can be seen that Scott's quality is not bad. On the contrary, it suits Hank Pym very well. Hear Hawkeye's words. Everyone also nodded. I think he was right. From the time the rankings appeared until now. All superheroes have qualities that are admirable. Although Scott is a bit cowardly this time. But I have to say that he does have good character. Even if life is difficult and you have to go back to your old job. But if you get something like the Ant-Man suit, you can still return it. It can be seen that he has always maintained a sense of awe in his heart. I can't help but look forward to it even more. How this guy becomes a superhero step by step. Just when everyone's senses about Scott became better, the people in the universe who are watching the video also have the same opinion. That's right. Although Scott did not perform well. But I have to say that his character is very good. It's hard not to want to keep reading. Video continues. When Scott was caught red-handed. The scene changes. He sat in the cell with a dejected look on his face. Seems a little overwhelmed. I had been in prison for 3 years, but I had already planned to wash my hands of it. Unexpectedly, not long after he was released from prison, he was now back in prison. It was hard for him to imagine. What kind of disaster will this theft bring to him? Of course. It wasn't the boredom of jail that worried him. But his daughter. He has always wanted to bring a happy life to his daughter and set an example for her. Cassie will be disappointed to see you in jail for theft again. At this time. There was a sigh from the side. The camera looks over. Scott's ex-wife's current husband was seen standing outside the cell. He crossed his hands in front of his chest and looked at Scott as if he were watching a joke. After all, he didn't expect it. How long has passed? This guy got busted for theft again. Scott was speechless. I even wanted to scold the guy in front of me. But he was right. If my daughter knew about this, I will definitely be very disappointed with myself. Very disappointed. Hey, there's someone here for you. Your lawyer. At this time. Another figure walked straight to the cell. And spoke. Here this Scott was stunned for a moment. Not only was he penniless, but he also had a criminal record. How could he have a lawyer? But he had to stand up. A dead horse becomes a live doctor. The moment he walked out of the cell, a smooth transition occurred, and Scott walked into the discussion room. This was a discussion room exclusively between prisoners and lawyers. I said I would contact you, Scott, and I'm starting to think you'd rather stay in your cell. I saw the camera following Scott's gaze. Just as everyone suspected. Sure enough, Hank Pym came to see Scott. Sir, I'm sorry, I stole your clothes. Scott sat down. Terrified. Sorry is written all over my face. See him like this. Hank Pym nodded. Very satisfied. Maggie wasn't wrong about you. No wonder she didn't let you get close to Kathy. When the times got tough, you went back to committing crimes. Scott's face was filled with shock. Why does this guy in front of me know about him? Even my own family knows. But this sentence also said something deep in his heart. Now I just feel regretful. Very regretful. It seems to me that you have a choice between spending the rest of your life in prison or returning to your cell and awaiting further instructions. I Do not understand. Of course he didn't understand. Point. He was completely confused. Point. What does this old man want to do? I don't expect you to understand. Frankly speaking, I don't have a choice, Hank. Pym sighed. Point. He told how he operated and then lured Scott step by step to obtain the Ant-Man suit. Second chances are rare, so next time, if you think you see an opportunity, I suggest you take a closer look. Finished. Point. Hank. Pym just left. Point. A confused Scott was left behind. Point. See this scene. Point. Countless viewers who are watching the video are full of anticipation. Point. They can feel that Hank Pym is facing a huge crisis now. After all, he said it himself, and he had no choice. Zero. Ask for flowers. What is it that Hank Pym can't solve? Hank Pym can even kill the Avengers one by one, but there are times when he is helpless. He actually needs Scott. Oh my god. I'm looking forward to seeing more and more what difficulties Hank Pym encounters. But hasn't Scott been arrested now? How can I help? Go back to the cell and wait for further instructions. Maybe you can see it later. Countless people are looking forward to it. Point. His eyes were fixed on Scott. Point. Want to know what instructions Hank gave Scott. Point. Video continues when Hank leaves. Scott returned to his cell. Point. Regret, guilt and other emotions filled his heart. Point. But now the only one he can rely on is Hank Pym. But he was also curious. Chapter 285. What instructions would Hank Pym give him? At this time. Point. Surprising and mysterious music played in the background, as if coming directly from the bottom of the sea to the vast grassland. It not only made people feel comfortable, but also aroused curiosity at the same time. Point. While Scott was thinking, Zero, the camera zooms in on his face. Point. I saw that his face immediately showed a look of shock and disbelief from the bitter look just now. Point. His eyes were fixed on the ground. Point. When the camera follows his gaze to the ground. Point. Countless people took a breath of cold air. I saw a few ants appearing on the ground in an orderly manner, and you could vaguely see that they were carrying something, etc. Could it be the Ant-Man suit? Holy crap. So this is the so-called instruction. Interesting. With the Ant-Man suit, why are you worried about not being able to escape from prison? 666. I just like to see this guy escaping from prison, and then the prison guards are surprised. Video continues when the ants came to Scott. Point. The Ant-Man suit instantly became normal size. Point. And tight. Urgent music played. Point. The ants on the ground set out numbers one after another like a countdown. Point. And the video is split into two. Point. On the left is Scott, who is still immersed in shock and hesitation, and on the right is the patrolling prison guard. Point. Countless people watching the video became nervous and looked at Scott with bated breath, wanting to know how he chose. Exclamation point. 10.9.8. I saw the ants laying out the countdown numbers. Scott hesitated for 2 seconds wearing the Ant-Man suit. Point. And at the last second, when the prison guard came to the cell, he successfully shrunk. Ding. Ding ding ding. The alarm sounds. It sounded extremely nervous, but those who were watching the video breathed a sigh of relief, and I felt secretly happy. The prison guards were shocked when Scott disappeared out of thin air. I just thought it was funny and interesting. Hahaha. Look at these prison guards. They are all confused. They must be thinking, damn, where are the people? That's right. They must have thought that Scott teleported, but they certainly didn't expect that Scott had shrunk. Interesting. Scott still chose Ant-Man. Now we finally know what Hank Pym wants to do with him, right? It sounds serious. Yeah. I hope to see the moment when Scott becomes a hero. Factory 169. Scott, never steal again. Hank, I want you to steal. I didn't expect that this guy would actually return the Ant-Man suit and be forced to board your pirate ship. I'm becoming more and more interested in this guy. At this moment. Point. When Hope saw Scott's series of operations, he couldn't help but feel a strong interest in him. Point. Good guy. Point. Others are flocking to their father's technology. Point. As a result, this guy didn't take it seriously. Point. If it weren't for his father to convince him. Point. Maybe it's really hard to become Ant-Man. Point. It just made her curious. Why on earth does his father need Scott? But I'm curious, why didn't you let me go instead of choosing an outsider? Faced with Hope's doubts, Hank Pym also sighed. Point. Although I don't know what I need Scott to do in the future. Point. But as to why not let his daughter become Ant-Man. Point. Then he still knows, because he has lost a true love. Point. The last hope. The last hope He couldn't lose any more points, so he responded, that must be because in the future there will be very dangerous things that need to be solved and you, Hope, are my last hope. 640. Heard Hank Pym's words, the corners of Hope's mouth raised slightly. Unexpectedly, my father, who has always been serious in speech, did not expect that. He actually expresses his emotions directly. But it's not surprising. She already understood her father's feelings for her in the previous video of killing the Avengers, so this is why there is no barrier between the two. This also made Hope even more curious. What on earth was worthy of Hank Pym doing this? While the two were still talking, the video continues. Wise choice, you finally figured it out. Get under the door. At this moment, when Scott shrinks into Ant-Man, directed by Hank Pym remotely, escaped from the police station all the way, and came to the side of the road. Okay, where to now, Scott? Panicked, even though this is his second transformation into Ant-Man. But what I have to say is that I'm still very scared. I was afraid of being trampled to death or being eaten by some mice as bugs. But when he said this, a group of ants came to Scott. It frightened him so much that he fell to the ground. Back off, Scott. They are all our companions. Just when Scott was extremely panicked, Hank Pym spoke to comfort him. Hear his words. Scott wasn't the only one shocked. People watching the video were also extremely shocked. Unexpectedly, Ant-Man can not only shrink to the size of an ant, but he can also control ants. But when they recalled the scene in the zombie universe where Hope controlled the insect army, we connected instantly. Holy crap, not only can I shrink, but I can also control ants. This is so fun. An army of ants. This is a good idea, and there are many types of ants, and they can kill people invisible. It would be fun if I could shrink and control ants. Yes, who doesn't want to have a variety of pets, although they were ants that could once be crushed to death with one kick. But what about a swarm of ants? Thousands of ants. That would be a terrifying army. Plus there are so many types of ants, there is no shortage of some aggressive types. It is even comparable to an army. Kill invisible. More interesting than bullets or missiles. After all, this is a novelty that they have never seen before. Is there a camera on the ant's head? Okay, I didn't say no. Where is the car? Scott was so shocked that he was speechless, but the thought of shrinking himself was shocking enough. So the inner receptivity is much stronger. But when he asked where the car was, Hank Pym said, as if he was very disgusted, we don't have a car, so we fly. It's coming. Chapter 286. The words just fell. There was a sound like the roar of a helicopter. When the camera follows Scott's gaze, I saw an ant with wings landing in front of him. Good guy. His mode of transportation is actually an ant. Soon. Scott then rode on the ant and galloped through the night sky. Accompanied by the sound of countless police sirens. Countless people watching the video felt their blood boiling all over looking at these notes like a fool. Not to mention how cool it is. Wait, I'm a little dizzy. When Scott and the flying ants continued to fly high into the sky. Scott couldn't hold it anymore. It can be seen that, although driving ants is fun, it is not something that ordinary people can bear. After Scott said this, he fell directly from the ant's back, falling straight from the sky, just like the falling scene of Iron Man's first experiment. As Scott kept falling, an extremely smooth transition appears. Scott, who was originally wearing the Ant-Man suit, appeared again, already lying on the bed. I saw him walking through layers of ants, came to the living room, finally met Hank Pym and his daughter Hope. I went to great lengths to let you steal my suit, but Hope let you get caught. Okay, let's try it first. If he can't do it, I'll go by myself. Hope was very unhappy. I don't know why my father wanted to find an outsider to help things that I can obviously accomplish by myself. But he never allowed himself to do it. It's as uncomfortable as if your most precious thing has been taken away from you. She is a little anxious, of course, because of this mission. Since you are sitting in front of me now, I believe you must be very interested in this mission. What mission, Hank Pym had just finished speaking. Scott asked out loud. He wasn't the only one who was curious. Everyone watching the video is curious. What task did Hank Pym take so much pains to give to Scott? I'm really impressed that you actually broke through my security system. The technique of freezing metal is especially clever, Hank. Pym didn't directly say what the mission was. Instead, he expressed his appreciation. It can be seen that he has been observing Scott. Ah. You observing me, Scott? I have been observing you for a while, ever since you robbed Vista. Sorry, I should use the word robbery to describe it. Vista's security system is the most advanced in the industry. It should be unbreakable, but you did it. Zero. When Hank Pym finished saying this, the scene changes came to an underground laboratory. Walking with Scott, he said, 40 years ago, I invented a formula that changed the relative distances of yards, and that's how that suit works. This invention was so dangerous that I hid it and started my own company, Pym Technology. Yes, I have a student named Darren Cross. Darren Cross. He has a huge reputation. Scott had heard of this man. Seems like I know this guy. But Hank Pym said disdainfully, he was my assistant when he was not so famous. I valued him very much. Maybe he regarded him as my son. He was very talented. But as a relationship got closer, he began to suspect that I was involved in something. Without telling him, he believed the rumors about the so-called Pym particles, so he wanted to copy my formula like an obsession, but I was unwilling to help him, so he conspired to vote me out of my own company. Hank Pym continued to explain, including his own daughter who cast this crucial vote to kick him out of the company. And after realizing that Cross was about to successfully copy the formula, he came back to discuss the matter with him. After listening to Hank Pym's words, many people watching the video now finally know about Hank Pym's plight. He originally hid Ant-Man's technology. But he didn't expect that Cross, who regarded him as his own son, was about to create this technology. So for Hank Pym, it is already a huge crisis. Of course, it is not a crisis caused by one's own technology being copied by others, but I feel in crisis for the world. After all, they also see this technology in their eyes. Once it is used by criminals, let alone the Avengers 1.3, the whole world will not be peaceful. I believe that everyone should have a chance to redeem themselves. Do you believe that? I believe, if you can help me, I promise I can reunite you and your daughter again. Are you ready to redeem yourself? Of course. The days of breaking into other people's houses and stealing things are completely over, Scott said in a deep voice. After what happened this time, he strengthened his belief in his heart. Never steal again. Even if I kill you, I won't steal it. See this scene. Countless people also understand. This incident really left Scott with a psychological shadow. And look forward to Scott becoming a superhero from now on. What do you want me to do? When Scott asked this sentence, the expectations of countless people are even more heightened. They know, starting now, Scott, he's going to be a superhero. I want you to break into other people's houses and steal things, Scott. Everyone. 170. Hank Pym is captured, and Scott begins Ant-Man training at $%. Damn it, I thought what kind of mission Hank Pym would give him. Unexpectedly, I still stole something. Damn it, Hank Pym didn't let you play like this. Obviously after this theft, Scott changed his mind again, prepared a golden basin to wash his hands, and never stole anything again. Good guy, let's ask him to steal again. Hahaha, I'm laughing so hard. Look at Scott's confused look. I've already taken a screenshot. This meow really made me laugh. The first sentence said that the days of stealing are gone forever, and the second sentence said that he steals things. Scott is not a real dog, but Hank Pym is. At this moment when Hank Pym said those words, countless viewers watching the video felt sorry for Scott for a second. Originally they thought Hank Pym would give Scott a glorious mission or something. Moreover, Scott was well aware of the heavy responsibility on his shoulders and decided not to steal anything. But who would have thought the task Hank Pym assigned to Scott turned out to be to steal something. Isn't this his meow just teasing him? Break the power in 1 second. Damn it, Hank Pym really has you. At this time Scott, who who was watching the video, was originally looking forward to becoming a superhero in 2009 with the help of Hank Pym, so that he could save his image in front of his daughter, but who could have imagined that it would be such a task point. Even though he is such a gentle person, he can't help but swear this is so fucked up. Could it be that I can really only become a thief? Not a superhero? Don't worry, Scott, you will definitely become a superhero. I'm very optimistic about you, Lewis. On the side, saw Scott like this. To be honest, he was also very embarrassed. He never thought that in the future it would be because he told Scott the news that he would not only return to his old career but also be imprisoned again. Although he got to know Hank Pym and obtained the Ant-Man suit. But he knew that what Scott cared about most was his daughter. This incident will definitely make his daughter very disappointed. So if Scott didn't do anything heroic, he will also feel uneasy. I had to keep praying. Chapter 287. Go. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have encountered this. But this time is different. You are stealing to save the world. Cassie will definitely understand. Scott was in a bad mood. But when I think about stealing because I want to save the world, I suddenly felt much more comfortable. That's right. This time I'm the same as last time. All fighting for justice. My daughter will definitely understand. So he turned his attention to the dimensional platform, wanting to see how he could help Hank Pym with his superb stealing skills. The other side. Hank Pym, who was being complained about by countless people, was in a very bad mood. Of course, he's not bad because of it. Because the apprentice he regarded as his son could do such a thing. You must know that I have not paid much attention to PIM technology in the past few years, but he never thought that one day his apprentice would imitate his formula, putting himself in crisis. Father, fortunately there is this video. He probably hasn't produced it yet. Hope said anxiously on the side. She never thought that she would be stupid enough to kick her father out of his own company in the future, and it also fueled Cross's experiments in replicating his father. If not for this video, you may not even know what a stupid thing you have done. Don't worry, Hope. I want to see what kind of things this guy can create in the future. Anyway, now, SHIELD has probably sent someone to contact him. Hank Pym was in no rush. Not to mention whether he is willing to let Cross master this technology. It's impossible for even the SHIELD people to agree. This is also the benefit of video exposure. Anyone who is dangerous will have their water meters checked one by one by SHIELD. It seems you still remember SHIELD's methods, Hank. At this time, a familiar voice came from behind. Hank and Hope were seen looking back at the same time. The figure of Nick Fred appeared here. I knew you would come, Hank Pym was relieved. Standing up and facing Nick Fury. He had already expected this scene when he saw another universe massacre the entire Avengers for Hope. It is impossible for SHIELD to let any dangerous guy go. Not to mention the one who massacred the entire Avengers. To be honest, I still hope that you can continue to work in SHIELD. After all, you have also seen that your technology will be the key to saving the world in the future. No, I'm still more optimistic about Scott. He is much more reliable than your SHIELD team. Here, the words Nick Fury didn't say much. He knew he couldn't change a stubborn old man like Hank Pym. So he waved. Coulson and others entered the room directly. Taken away Hank Pym and Hope. Compared to previous treatments of superheroes, this time Nick Fury's methods are much tougher. So continue to set off to PIM technology. Directly prevent possible disasters. Just as the real world is under current 640. The video continues when Hank Pym said that told Scott about the Hornet suit and other things, and explained to him that if Cross succeeds, it means that the whole world will be plunged into turmoil, because he wants to trade this thing as an arms weapon. However, Scott always believed that he was not worthy, and even suggested that he should ask the Avengers for help. Here his words. Hank Pym couldn't hold it in any longer. I have spent half my life preventing this technology from falling into the hands of the Stark family, and this technology is not like Iron Man's suit, which can change the face of reality. Besides, the Avengers are busy throwing cities from the sky. Here, This people who are watching the video seem to be aware of Hank Pym's resentment towards the Stark family. Even Tony Stark himself was extremely helpless. It was as if he had done something wrong to Hank Pym. But that's it. The music became intense and majestic, like a hero coming on stage. Inspired by Hank Pym. Scott finally agreed to become Ant-Man and started his own training. See this scene. Not only are others looking forward to it, but Scott himself, who is watching the video, is also looking forward to stealing the Hornet's suit to avoid world turmoil. 171. The Falcon catches the ants. Scott is in danger. Hell, this guy actually said this directly. Did our Stark family do anything to feel sorry for him? Even just copying his Pym particles is not for our own benefit. Tony was getting angrier and angrier now. Even very confused. I never expected that Hank Pym would say such a thing. He actually spent most of his life preventing this technology from falling into their family. Get rid of. His father is to promote the development of science and technology. It's not for your own personal gain. Is it necessary to guard the Stark family against thieves like this? This way I understand why Hank Pym didn't ask S.H.I.E.L.D. for help. It seems there are two reasons. The first is to guard against Mr. Stark, and the other is that the Avengers members at that time still just busy dealing with Ultron. Spider-Man said thoughtfully. It seems that the timeline for this matter is still very far behind. Hank Pym's throwing tall buildings down from the sky should refer to what will happen to Ultron in the future. So Hank Pym would not go to the Avengers for help. You just have to find your favorite candidate. That is Scott. But thankfully Scott finally agreed and became Ant-Man for the sake of his daughter. Even if he comes to me for help, maybe I won't necessarily help him. Tony Stark was unhappy. Even a little arrogant. Are you trying to prevent me and come to me for help? Dream. I saw him looking at the video towards the dimensional platform. If he hadn't known that in the future, he would have gone to the past with this Scott to recapture the cosmic cube. I don't even want to watch this video. Watch this video now. It's just to give Scott face at this moment. In video. Scott went through a series of workouts including shrinking and controlling ants. After long and hard training. He finally succeeded. And accomplished what Hank Pym did again and again. The last stage of training is stealth. At this time Hank Pym's voice rang out. It's like training an assassin and then giving him the final mission to test his overall strength. Only seen in the laboratory. Hank Pym spread out a drawing showing a precise object and then continued, "You have to get this prototype signal disguiser, which I invented during my time at SHIELD, to use against the communications jammer cross installed in the vault of the future lab. It's currently gathering dust in an old Howard Stark warehouse in upstate New York, so getting it should be a piece of cake." When Hank Pym said the mission. Chapter 288. Tony Stark, who was watching the video, couldn't bear it anymore. Good guy. 1 second he said that he had been letting go of the Stark family for most of his life. Now someone is coming to steal his warehouse, even though it was made by Hank Pym. But this kind of behavior is very unpleasant. Contrary to his anger, Hawkeye on the side was very interested. After all, he believed from the beginning that an existence like Ant-Man was very suitable. To be an assassin killer and secret infiltration is a required course, so he was looking forward to seeing how Scott infiltrated the warehouse, and he had a premonition. The truth would certainly be the opposite of what Hank Pym says in the video. It's a piece of cake. After all, he understands this author very well. Video continues when Hank Pym finished speaking. The background of Scott in front of him immediately changed from a laboratory to a seemingly very small gap, and there were many ants standing beside him. Then I heard Hank Pym's voice coming from the headset. "You're over the target area, ready to exit, Scott." The words just fell. On the plane. Scott and a group of ants descended from the sky and passed through layers of clouds and fog to what Hank Pym called the old warehouse. However, when the appearance of the old warehouse caught everyone's eyes, countless people's faces showed expressions of gloating. Because that building is clearly engraved with the Avengers logo. Hahaha, this damn thing has turned into an Avengers building. Scott failed on his first mission. I bet he failed and maybe gave the Ant-Man suit to S.H.I.E.L.D. Now, Hank Pym is hiding in the toilet and crying. He has been trying to prevent Ant-Man's technology from being taken away by S.H.I.E.L.D. Now it's fine. It's been delivered directly to his home by air express. See this scene. Countless people were quick to think of Scott's failure. After all, if it is an old warehouse, it's easy to sneak in. But this is the new Avengers building. Let's not talk about whether there are superheroes guarding it. It's impossible. That advanced surveillance technology alone can't detect an intruder. What's more, it's even more impossible for a newbie like Scott to complete the task. People can already imagine the painful scene when Scott failed and gave the Ant-Man suit to S.H.I.E.L.D. and then Hank Pym hid in the toilet. Hank, didn't you say this was an old warehouse? It's not, you bastard. At this time Scott exclaimed. I even wanted to scold Hank Pym. Where's the old warehouse we talked about? How come he turned into an Avengers building? Give up. Give up the mission. Seeing this scene remotely, Hank Pym yelled out quickly. Apparently he didn't trust Scott to get the job done. And what worries him the most is that the Ant-Man suit will fall into the hands of S.H.I.E.L.D. This is what he never wants to see. But Scott disobeyed his order and said calmly, "It's okay. It seems no one is home." Viewed from above. Almost no one. I saw Scott landing smoothly on the top of the building. Just when he was comforting and saying that there was no one. Accompanied by tense music. A familiar figure caught everyone's eyes. It's a falcon. What's going on down there? A sensor sounded the alarm, but I didn't see any movement. Sam replied. And used his glasses to look around. See this scene. Countless viewers who were watching the video held their breath and were nervous to the extreme. Although they know once Avengers technology can definitely sense Ant-Man. But who would have thought it would be so fast? Fortunately, Falcon didn't see Scott. This made people breathe a sigh of relief. But at this moment Sam's words made people's hearts hang. Again, wait a moment. The camera looks forward along Sam's infrared glasses. I saw a box that seemed to be locked onto something, and I saw an extremely small Scott. Despite what Scott was trying to reassure himself, Falcon couldn't see himself. "I see you." But Falcon's words immediately chilled his heart. It also made countless people watching the video nervous again. One is the Falcon who has become a superhero, and the Ant who is just a fledgling. This is no longer as simple as an eagle catching a chicken and crushing it. This is an eagle catching an ant, which can be described as a dimensionality reduction attack. Scott, danger. 172. Good guy. Scott really dares to fight. Good guy. Scott is dead. This is no longer just an eagle catching chickens. This is an eagle catching ants. I'm laughing so hard. He's actually still thinking to himself that he can't see me. He can't see me. How could there be such a stupid cute guy? I guess everyone in Scott was confused. One second he said there was no one, and the next second a Falcon came. I guess this mission must have failed. Scott is miserable. It's Falcon. You know Captain America gave his shield to Falcon. Wouldn't it take a matter of minutes to beat Scott? That's right, Scott. I guess I really have to explain here. At this moment when Falcon said these words, countless people's hearts trembled. They seemed to have seen what happened to Scott. After all, Falcon and the others knew very well at this moment. Although there are not many scenes in the video. But which Avengers member is a soft persimmon? Not to mention in the future. Captain America even handed his shield to Falcon. This further proves Falcon's strength and character. He is the heir to Captain America. And what is Scott? He is a reformed thief. Even after being trained by Hank Pym and Hope. But in front of Falcon, who is under high intensity training and tasks every day 640, totally not enough. This is why people think Scott is miserable. At this time Falcon, who was watching the video, raised the corners of his mouth slightly. Although he has appeared in previous videos, but it was only for a while. There are no highlights so much, so that he stood here watching the video with everyone else. Don't dare to speak. Who kept him from being on the list. But things are different now. Now in the video, he is also facing another superhero. Although it is a bit bullying. But the thought of beating him up is one of his highlights. Right. Hey. Chapter 289. Falcon felt happy now. I'm looking forward to the scene of Scott being beaten violently by me. This little ant is so ignorant that he actually broke into our Avengers base. I will definitely recycle his Ant-Man suit on behalf of the Avengers. Falcon. hid his smile. Said righteously. At the same time, his eyes were still scanning the expressions of other members around him. Looking forward to some responses from them. Of course, that's what I want to see the most. Hank Pym never thought that, after guarding him for most of his life, he ended up sending it out with his own hands. Tony Stark is in a good mood. Originally, Scott's senses were just like that point, but now I feel very good about it. This guy sent the Ant-Man suit over for his first mission. Wouldn't this make Hank Pym mad to death? The thought of this, Tony Stark couldn't hold back his excitement. I'm really looking forward to the follow-up of Hank Pym's expression, as if he was avenging his father. Little Ant, you have to work harder. It's different from other Spider-Man. Peter Parker cheered secretly in his heart. Also, as a superhero who is not believed by anyone, he could feel the pressure on Scott at this time. So he naturally wanted to see Scott defeat Falcon. Justify the name of their insect combination. Soon. Nervous music plays in the video. It made countless people's nerves tense. I saw Falcon. After finishing those words, Scott sighed helplessly. I even felt a little scared. Originally, he thought Falcon said he saw him and just wanted to blow him up. But when he felt a gaze fixed on him, goosebumps all over his body, stood up. He never expected that he would still be discovered. So he changed back to his original shape. He said hello and said, "Hi, my name is Scott, everyone." What the hell? My name is Scott. Good guy. It's because Zan died fast enough, right? Damn it, he's not a fool, is he? He just announced his family name when he came up. I vomited. He is considered an intruder now. He just gave his name when he came up. Wouldn't it be easier for the Avengers to catch him? Hahaha, you made me laugh. This guy is so interesting. See this scene. Countless people are very helpless. Good guy. This Scott is really a living treasure. Not only talkative. And he doesn't play his cards according to normal people's routines. Interesting. But they knew that this would make Scott's death worse. What are you doing here? Falcon didn't greet Scott the same way. Instead, he looked at Scott warily and asked about the purpose. He sticks to his code. No intruder will be spared. Even an ant. First of all, I'm your fan. Thank you very much. Who are you? The Falcon was unmoved. Don't have feelings. Extremely cold. It won't work for Scott. I even thought to myself, Falcon doesn't seem to be following my own example, right? I'm Ant-Man. Ant-Man, haven't you heard of me? But it seems impossible that you have heard of me, Scott. Can't. Even a little embarrassing. And Falcon continued to repeat that sentence. Ask him what he is doing. I want to come and pick up a high-tech product. I can borrow it for a few days and I'll return it. I need it to save the world, you know. Yeah, I know it too well. I found the intruder. Let's bring him here now, Falcon said as he walked and reported the situation. See this scene. Countless spectators covered their faces in embarrassment. This guy not only introduced himself to his family, but also directly stated what he was here to do. Why does it smell like an honest person? He's so meowing. He answers whatever you ask. Falcon is now seen walking towards him. I don't even have any hope for him. But at this moment, the background music suddenly changes from tense to urgent and intense like a battle. It shocked countless people. I saw Scott just as the Falcon was about to catch him. He shrank directly, jumped up from the ground, and slammed his right fist towards the Falcon. Boom. A dull sound of impact resounded, and Scott's right fist hit Falcon's face heavily. The powerful force directly lifted Falcon's already heavy body off the ground and fell backwards. Fortunately, the Falcon reacted quickly and immediately spread its wings and rushed into the sky, thus avoiding the dilemma of being knocked down as soon as it came up. Boom, boom, boom. At this moment, the faces of those watching the video were filled with shock and disbelief. They never expected it. Scott actually attacked Falcon directly. Let everyone admire him. It seems that the previous conclusion was a bit too premature. Good guy. Scott really dares to fight. What's going on when it's on fire? Scott's punch is so damn cool. Hiss. How dare he hit Falcon? Good guy. Interesting. I feel like it was too early to draw a conclusion before, but I suddenly feel that a miracle may happen. Countless people are looking forward to it at this time. Everyone wants to know, Can Scott create a miracle and defeat the Falcon? Point 173. Scott actually won. Hiss, Scott, you can do it. You actually dare to shoot a falcon. But to be honest, in front of your daughter, you will definitely be able to brag about this for a lifetime. Well, although I dare to hit him, it doesn't mean that I can beat him. I'm so panicked right now. I'm afraid that I really gave the Ant-Man suit to the Avengers. Didn't the Alliance let down Hank's good intentions? At this time point, when Louis saw Scott punching Falcon without hesitation, even more excited than the person involved, honestly, he never expected it. The Scott in front of me looked a little timid. He actually does this. This simply impressed him. Who would have thought that a little ant who had just learned how to fight would dare to challenge a superhero like Falcon? Although compared to Captain America, Falcon gives him less pressure. But no matter how you say it, you are scorning Scott's existence. He couldn't help but give Scott a thumbs up, patted his shoulder and continued. Chapter 290. Even if you lose, others' opinions of you will change. After all, there are not many ordinary people who dare to fight superheroes. What do you think of me? Scott clenched his fists. That's right. He now particularly cares about what others think of him. Especially my daughter. I was worried when I saw myself imprisoned for the second time. Will his daughter think that he is really a bad person? But this time she will definitely understand. She will definitely understand that her father is a hero. Be a superhero who dares to fight the Falcon. The other side. The Avengers members who were watching the video looked at each other in confusion. Fixed his gaze on the Falcon. To be honest, no one expected it. The little and actually dared to fight the Falcon. Interesting. Really interesting. Falcon suppressed the anger in his heart. Laugh out loud. If you watch carefully, you can see his veins popping out. To be honest, he felt insulted. Obviously I thought I was going to show off my talents and express myself well. But I never expected it. I haven't done anything yet. This little and came up and punched himself. Isn't this a slap in the face? Not to mention, he also saw Captain America standing in front of him. This made his face even hotter. I can't wait to find a crack in the ground and crawl into it. This must be Falcon's carelessness, but I admire this little ant's courage. He can indeed join our Avengers. Captain America favors Falcon. After knowing that I will give him the shield in the future. Captain America has always been very optimistic about Falcon. He has been identified as his successor, although Paige has returned to her youth. But his mentality has changed now. You will definitely live the life you want in the future. Therefore, someone always needs to take his seat. That's right. This little ant is really interesting. He gets along well with Peter Parker. They are both guys with great potential. I think so too, and I think Mr. Scott will definitely impress us, with Tony Stark backing him up. Spider-Man Peter Parker somehow speaks directly from his heart. He now feels more and more that Scott, who is also a little insect, can create miracles. Video continues. In the eyes of countless people with shock and expectation, after the Falcon took to the sky, it used infrared detectors to continuously track the shrunken Scott and report the situation. The intruder is a grown man. There is a shrinking technology. Finished. Falcons have retargeted Scott, and he landed directly on the ground, raised his right foot and headed towards Scott. But you must know that even if Scott shrinks, his power is extremely terrifying. He jumped up without hesitation and kept attacking the Falcon. Hiss. See this scene. Countless people were stunned. Even want to say. Is this the Scott they know? Only seen in the screen. Scott first raised his right foot suddenly, and then came to Falcon's body, beating crazily. Every time he jumped, he slammed his fist on Falcon's body, beating it all over as if it was convulsing. Countless people were shocked. Enough. The Falcon roared angrily. He had never been beaten like this before. What's more, the other party is still a little ant, so after locking Scott, he punched him back to his original shape, holding his stomach and rolling around on the ground in pain. Then there is another set of military boxing to serve. But before Falcon could beat Scott violently. After Scott shrank to avoid the attack, he used the fighting skills that Hope taught him and threw Scott directly out. See this scene. A thought flashed through the minds of countless people. Zero ask for flowers. Could this Scott really defeat the Falcon? Holy crap, is this Scott so fierce? I thought he could take advantage just now because Falcon didn't react. Good guy. Can Scott really defeat Falcon? He's too strong. Interesting. Scott's fighting skills are really good. People really didn't expect it. Countless people are looking forward to it. His eyes were fixed on the screen. Except for one person. That's the beaten Falcon. He never thought that in the future he would be tortured like this by the little ants. This is simply a public execution. And it's not just execution on the entire planet. It's the entire universe. Oh my god. Unbearable. Unbearable. Falcon was a little dizzy. He sat down directly on the sofa. Then he closed his eyes. Honestly. If he really loses, then he won't even have the shame to stay here. A veteran can't defeat a thief. I just lost all my face. So now he is under great psychological pressure. Secretly praying that he must defeat Scott. Although it will still be a bit embarrassing, it is much better than losing. Video continues. Scott drove the flying ants directly into the building. When the Falcon saw the situation, he also followed in. The background music becomes extremely low and mysterious. The anticipation of countless people was instantly filled. They all held their breath and concentrated, wanting to know what was going on inside. But the camera stayed outside. There is no picture inside. This makes people even more nervous and expectant. After all, everyone wants to know. Between these two superheroes, who wins? But at this moment, a loud bang exploded. The Falcon crashed through the iron door and flew out. But the body kept shaking. It's like shaking something out. He's in my backpack. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 291. When Falcon said these words, the camera cuts directly to the inside of his backpack and sees Scott pulling out wires directly disable Falcon's aircraft. Then it hit the ground hard. Seeing this scene, countless people throughout the universe have fallen into sluggishness. Scott actually won. Factory 174. The wasp suit is a trap. Win. Scott wins. Am I fucking dreaming? I actually won. I burst into tears. I just gambled away my last personal money. Holy shit. The little ant won. Great. I thought it was an eagle catching an ant, but I didn't expect that the ant actually defeated the eagle. I didn't expect it. Who would have thought? Scott actually defeated Falcon. If you tell me this, you will be bragging about it for a lifetime. What happened to Falcon? He couldn't even defeat a newcomer. I just switched to another player. +1+1. I'm a fan of Scott now. That's great. I look forward to Scott stealing the wasp suit. He can definitely do it. At this moment, the entire universe was watching the video with shock on their faces. How could they not guess this ending? Scott actually won. Although he won by destroying Falcon's aircraft. But as long as you lose, everything is just an excuse. People's views on Scott couldn't help but undergo a 180-degree reversal. They were all optimistic that he could successfully steal the wasp uniform. After all, even the Avengers base can come and go freely. It shouldn't be a problem for a technology company. Right, they are not the only ones who think so. Scott, who is watching the video, is also full of expectations. He even jumped up with excitement. I originally thought that I could brag in front of my daughter if I could fight a few times with Falcon. Now he was defeated directly. Don't talk about changing your image in front of your daughter. Let me ask you, who dares to look down on him? Scott, now you can totally walk sideways. Okay, Louis, did you see that I defeated the Falcon? Compared to Scott, who is extremely excited here. Falcon, who was watching the video on the other side, had a burning face and even wanted to find a crack in the ground to crawl into. He didn't expect that he would actually lose. He's meowing. This is definitely a public execution. It's heartbreaking to kill someone. Dog. Author, I'm not done with you. Although Falcon is now very angry at being publicly executed by the author, but I felt the eyes from all directions. He knew that the other members of the Avengers were somewhat skeptical of him now, so he said nothing. Dare not say anything more. Video continues after Scott defeated Falcon. The scene goes directly to Hank Pym's home. You are completely irresponsible and too dangerous. You have messed up everything. At this time, Hank Pym's angry voice echoed throughout the room. No wonder he was so angry. If Scott hadn't defeated Falcon, then he would have worked in vain for most of his life. So to him, Scott was like a soldier who didn't follow orders from above. Extremely disappointing. But Scott didn't argue. Instead, he silently took out a rectangular instrument from his trouser pocket. Then put it on the table. When Hank Pym and Hope saw this thing, he immediately looked like he didn't know what to say. Good guy. Scott actually got this instrument. This slap in the face came a bit too suddenly, caught Hank Pym a little off guard. Here you go, Hank. Pym was a little embarrassed. Then he held the instrument and smiled. Even Hope praised him. Then comes the step of implementing the plan. Scott found Lewis and 3 other people. The scene transitioned smoothly again. The 3 people who were still making plans had already arrived in the familiar van. See this scene. It can't help but make people's blood boil. Although stealing is not very honorable. But people find that the cooperation of these people makes people want to watch it, and the plan is implemented without any delay. At this time, passionate urgent music played. Scott zoomed directly into the sewer as the camera follows Scott. It also allowed countless people to see a different world. I saw countless red ants entangled with each other, as if forming a small boat, surging forward with the water flow in the extremely small water pipe. See the scene. Countless people watching the video feel as if they are actually there. Along with the rapid water flow, my head felt a little dizzy. But it's more about novelty and excitement. I have seen the majestic waves of the sea. I have never seen this mysterious and smiling scene inside the water pipe. It's so interesting. It feels like the world has shrunk. It's really interesting. I suddenly feel envious. The shrunken world feels more shocking than the universe. Fortunately, Scott has become Ant-Man. Otherwise he would be so blessed that he would never know how lucky he is. Just when everyone expressed their envy, Scott is already, with the help of Ant, smoothly entered the company from the sewer, and with the help of flying ants, he came directly to the company. Then use ants to directly paralyze the server so that you can go directly to the particle library and seize the wasp suit. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Accompanied by Scott's hearty laughter, the expectations of countless people were instantly filled. I saw Scott and flying ant arriving at the upper pipe where the wasp suit was stored. But there is a laser net inside. Everything that is touched will basically turn into nothingness in an instant, even if the teammates outside are entangled by FBL. But fortunately, the laser network was closed in time. Scott successfully jumped from the pipe, accompanied by intense exciting music. Countless people held their breaths and even celebrated for him in advance for winning the Hornets jersey. However, at the moment Scott reached out and was about to get the Hornets uniform. But he found that the wasp suit was getting farther and farther away from him and disappeared. Hello, little one. When Scott was still confused, the camera turned. Chapter 292. Only the outside of the glassware is visible. Cross, who created the Hornet suit, looked at Scott with a smile, showing off the Hornet suit in his hand. It's a trap. See this scene. Countless people's hair stood on end. Obviously realized this was a trap. It felt like falling down after climbing Mount Everest, creating a huge psychological gap. Scott is in crisis again. 175. Ant-Man vs. Wasp suit. Shit. It's a trap. I thought I was going to be a hero. Now. When Scott was about to win the Hornets jersey, he suddenly saw Crossbold head appearing in the video. I couldn't help but yell, I'm very lucky. Went through many hardships, he finally managed to steal this thing and become a hero so that he could show it off in front of his daughter. Then you, the dead bald guy, showed up. It made Scott so angry that he almost died. I immediately realized that this bold man had actually set a trap early. Wait for him to come. Damn it. It turns out that this guy had already expected that you would come and steal the suit. I also thought you would succeed. Louis. on the side, stood up for Scott, and felt sorry for himself at the same time. Myself in the video. I also did a lot of things with him. This will fall short of the goal. Doesn't anyone feel uncomfortable? It's not just him. People in the universe who are watching the video also feel extremely unhappy. Even if Cross betrays Hank Pym, are you actually planning to sell the Hornet suit? Shouldn't this cause turmoil in the world? Bah, this guy is so hateful. Why would there be such a hateful person? It's really disgusting. Hank Pym treats him not only as a student, but also as a son, and this is how he repays Hank Pym. A white-eyed wolf, that's right. Such people don't deserve to live in this world. At this time, Hank Pym, who was watching the video, also looked at this scene in disbelief. Totally unexpected. Cross will actually look like this in the future. He never expected this. Once upon a time. Although Cross kept asking himself about Ant-Man. I was just hesitant and confused. But in the future, I didn't expect Cross to actually successfully copy his own technology, and also created a more powerful wasp suit. This is something Hank Pym now regrets. Even felt guilty for Scott. It was all him who harmed Scott. Father, all of this is also my fault. Aside. Hope comforted. She feels it now. Cruz can grow to that level in the future. There is also a big reason for her. If not yourself. It is impossible for Cross to have the funds or other means to develop the suit. So she also made a big mistake. I hope this guy can create miracles. Hope turned her attention to the dimensional platform again. Although Scott in the video is trapped in the vessel. But she believed it. This guy was able to beat the Falcons and create the first miracle. Then there will be a second one, a third one. Video continues when Cross took out the Hornets uniform. Watching Hank Pym and Hope. Like a child trying to prove himself in front of his father, constantly taunting Hank Pym. He even pointed the gun in his hand at Hank Pym. See this scene. Hope quickly took the pistol from the security guard on the side and pointed it at Darren Cross. Put your gun down, Hope. You're on the wrong team. Cross is determined to kill. For Hank Pym, there was only hatred left in his heart. Every time he wanted to know Ant-Man's secrets, Hank Pym's eyes were full of disdain. For a long time. He's had enough. It was Hank Pym who gave him hope and plunged him into despair, and now he has finally created a suit more powerful than Ant-Man. Hank Pym was hopeless for him. See this scene. Scott, who was trapped in the glass vessel, kept trying to break the glass, but no matter what he tried, nothing worked. I was extremely anxious. Fortunately, he suddenly thought of a trick. So he took out something similar to a frisbee and threw it towards the glass. Boom. The sound of breaking glass was heard. Under the action of the magnifying device, the vessel suddenly broke into countless pieces and scattered in the sky. And Scott also jumped out extremely quickly, killing guys holding guns one after another. But Hank Pym was still shot. Hank, trust me, you'll be fine. Scott looked at the injured Hank Pym. I became even more worried. But Hope on the side is very sensible. Remind him that the most important thing now is to get the Hornet suit back. Now the database is about to be destroyed. As long as the Hornet suit is also destroyed or brought back. It won't cause turmoil in the world. Hear Hope's words. Scott didn't hesitate. It directly broke through many difficulties, arriving at the helicopter that was about to take off. Whoosh. Scott drove the flying ant that had been with him for a long time, Anthony, and led the army of flying ants towards the helicopter. What he has to do now is to catch up with Cross, but at this moment Cross kept shooting at him. Brass bullets knocked down one flying ant after another and also kill Anthony below him. Seeing this scene, Scott roared with all his strength. It's like losing a friend forever. My heart is like a knife. I'll make you regret it. Chapter 293. Scott gritted his teeth. The moment the plane took off, it was already reached point, and he acted vigorously and knocked out everyone in the plane. Do you think destroying it will prevent future technological development? This is not the only thing I want to destroy, Scott said coldly. Then I heard a roar outside the window. Cross noticed movement, and when he shifted his gaze to the window, the camera followed his gaze. I saw Pym Technology Company disappearing in an explosion. When the camera shifts, To cross again point I saw that he had already put on the wasp uniform point the aura on his body is extremely oppressive. The background music became extremely dangerous at this time point, but people can't wait to see the Ant-Man versus Wasp suit. Point 176. Scott was arrested and Cross held his daughter hostage. Haha. It's so cool. It's so cool. Look at that bald head. He's going to explode, isn't it? I finally did a good thing. Is this really me? I really can't believe it. At this moment point, when Scott was still worried about whether he in the video could successfully escape point I saw myself in the video doing it in one go. Not only did I successfully rescue Hank Pym, but I also directly blew up the entire Pym technology building, destroying the data stored by Cross. See Cross is ferocious and disbelieving face point, not to mention how happy and excited I am. Even Louis on the side point I was also filled with emotion point, even a little unbelievable point he and Scott actually succeeded. Moreover, this task was completed extremely perfectly and impeccable. Wait a minute, this guy's wearing a wasp suit, but at this moment point Louis' words brought Scott out of his excitement point. When he turned his attention to Cross again in the video, he saw that the latter had already put on the Hornet's uniform, and he was filled with a sense of oppression just by looking at it. After all, this is brand new technology, much more powerful than the Ant-Man suit he wears. This is dangerous. Oops, his suit is much stronger than mine. Scott felt the crisis, even the hairs on the hair stand on end point. I feel like I might be finished point, and Louis on the side heard this. He also put his hands on his shoulders to comfort him point. Anyway point Scott's image here is already that of a hero. What's more, I have done a lot of good things, and maybe I will be considered a little hero. When I think of this, he became more and more convinced that Scott would win. Don't worry, you will definitely win. I believe in you. The other side point Hank Pym, who was watching the video, never expected it point. Cross hated him so much, he didn't even hesitate to shoot. I just hate it to the core of my being. Although the explosion of Pym Technology Company made him feel better, at least all the databases that Cross cracked were destroyed point. But the moment he saw Cross put on the Hornet's uniform, he couldn't help but sweat for him. It's not just him point. The Avengers and everyone in the universe watching the video began to worry. In their eyes the Wasp suit is obviously better than the Ant-Man suit. Can Scott defeat Cross? Video continues. Under the expectant and anxious eyes of countless people point Cross stood in front of Scott wearing a Hornet's uniform point. His heart at this moment was erupting like a volcano point. I want to cut Scott in front of me with 1,000 knives. He was lucky to have struggled for so many years. I finally made the wasp suit. As a result, the guy in front of me, he actually blew up the company. The data inside was also destroyed. This hurts him more than killing him. How can I forgive this guy in front of me? How could we let go of this guy in front of us? Obviously Hank Pym can tell him the Ant-Man suit and secrets, then nothing will happen. But Hank Pym chose the guy in front of him. Why? Cross's heart felt like it was being cut by a knife point. The eyes under the armor were extremely blood red point. Immediately head towards Ant-Man. However, Cross was seen wearing a Hornet's uniform point. The well-trained Scott didn't hesitate point. He immediately shrunk and punched Cross, but he didn't expect it to directly ignite his anger. As if losing his mind, he fired a laser at Ant-Man crazily, penetrating the deck of the helicopter and even the body of the pilot. Buzz buzz, the helicopter burst point. Smoke and flames continued to rise point, falling down from the sky like a cannonball point. The battle between Cross and Scott also happened from inside the helicopter into the suitcase, and also fell from a high altitude. I'm going to tear you apart, Cross roared angrily point. The constant battle with Ant-Man in the suitcase point. Even if he has laser weapons, but he was neck and neck with Ant-Man point. After all, Scott has been professionally trained. See this scene point. Countless people held their breath point. They are expecting Scott to defeat Cruz point. But at this moment point the lens is pulled out of the box point. I saw the suitcase free fall into the swimming pool, and the two started fighting again in the home of an ordinary resident. Fortunately, Scott once again relied on his ability to improvise and used a table tennis paddle to hit the shrunken cross onto the mosquito zapper, instantly knocking him out. At the same time, fierce, victorious sounds rang out in the background. It seems that Scott has won this battle. See this scene. Countless people breathed a sigh of relief. As long as Cross is caught on the mosquito zapper, this crisis can be ended. But at this moment, a voice came from behind Scott. Stop. The words just fell. Scott turned to look. As a result, I saw two police officers, one of whom was the current husband of Scott's ex-wife. Scott, without waiting for Scott to explain, the man fired an electric shock bullet directly at Scott without thinking, knocking him out instantly. Chapter 294. And carried him directly to the car, preparing to send him back to prison. See the scene. Countless people were confused. It's time to catch Cross. As a result, Scott was arrested by Wang Li Zhao. Are you a stupid policeman? I'm really anxious. Won't it be over when Cross wakes up? Is there something wrong with this policeman's mind? He arrested Scott without saying a word. Fuck. Go back and catch Cross quickly. People who are watching the video are impatient. Not to mention Scott. The first thing, when he wakes up, I just wanted to explain to my ex-wife's husband, but it was rejected on the spot. But at this moment, a report came from the police car, the place where the incident occurred. It's the policeman's body. Cassie. Scott was shocked. Seems aware. Cross has gone to his ex-wife's house and kidnapped Cassie, and the people who are watching the video are even more anxious. Scott, can he succeed? 177. Scott was angry and fought against the Hulk and Nick Fury. Cassie? F***CK. If he dares to touch Cassie, I tell him to go see God right now. At this time, just when Scott thought that was the end of it, I didn't expect that I would be kidnapped by my ex-wife's husband. What was even more unexpected was that the report from the police car was exactly where Cassie was. It immediately occurred to me that Cross was eyeing Cassie. How could this not make him angry? You know what he cares about most is his daughter. Click, click, click. When Scott was furious, the surrounding space trembled violently again, and countless cracks like spider webs appeared, as if they were broken. A terrifying and huge crack appeared in the entire earth with him as the center. Countless gravel and dust were flying all over the sky, and the momentum caused could only be used. Amazing to describe. See the scene. The faces of prisoners or guards in the already ruined prison were full of horror, praying in my heart that Scott would calm down. Scott, fortunately, at this time, Louis Roar awakened Scott's sanity. The violently trembling world also returned to calm at this moment. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief, and many prisoners begged the prison guards to transfer them out. 657. Scott, he is too dangerous. See everything around you. Scott got it. He can't stay here any longer. He is going to Prime Technology now. What? Cross, kill in minutes. He was furious. As soon as he got up, two familiar figures appeared in front of them. One is the Hulk and the other is Nick Fury. See this scene. Scott knows you are so dangerous. It's impossible for S.H.I.E.L.D. to let him do whatever he wants, but he still wanted to retort. Is it possible that the United Nations has signed the Sokovia Accords? Do you want to trigger a second civil war by controlling us like this? As Scott, who has just gained strength, freedom had become one of his goals, not to mention in the future. I also chose the side of Captain America. For freedom. He is willing to stand up and resist, so he was very dissatisfied with what Nick Fury did. Scott, if it were before, the Sokovia Agreement might still have a certain binding effect, but now not only you, but also I must be controlled. After all, the rewards we received are too terrifying! Exclamation mark. As for the civil war, that hasn't happened yet. I'd rather it didn't happen. Nick Fury revealed his helplessness in every word. Yes, if it were the previous superpower, simply being restricted from movement is enough. But they received rewards from the dimensional platform. Making all countries very afraid of them. Afraid that they would destroy the entire planet if they raised their hands. So the current situation is even more serious. As for the civil war, that hasn't happened yet. If there really is a fight, it's not as simple as destroying a few planes like in the video. When the time comes, all life will be devastated. Not what he wanted to see at all. Yes, Scott, we have to discuss how to appease the people. Drive. Banner is also extremely worried. Although countries around the world are paying close attention to the ranking videos of the Dimension platform. But secretly, more and more people are afraid of superheroes. After all, the Dark and Doctor Strange and others revealed in the multiverse. It all scares them. So if you don't think of a way anymore. They superheroes are struggling. It could even trigger a series of fishing boats. Then there will be another civil war. It's really too late. No. I must kill Cross. Although I seem to be easy to bully, no one can bully my daughter. Threats, let alone I don't know if it's because of the reward. At this time, Scott was very confident. It can even be said that he is no longer the little ant with a low sense of existence. Him now. You can have the Zensin fruit. Not even the Hulk, not even Nick Fury can stop him. If you insist on doing this, then you can't blame me. Drive. Banner himself is gentle. But the Hulk in his body is not a vegetarian. Looking at Scott's posture, it's impossible to give in without a fight. After all, they understand. His most cherished daughter will be threatened in the future. No matter what, you have to plan ahead and kill him. But once you do. Scott's behavior will surely become the trigger for the second Sokovia Accords, just like in the video. Then others can make a fuss about this. Then strongly restrict them. Avengers, perhaps, as he said, it is very likely to cause a civil war. Raw. Drive. Banner roared angrily, transformed directly into the Hulk. Because the prison here is surrounded by their shield, even fighting would not elicit an international response. That's why they won't worry about fighting here. Scott, if your daughter finds out about your actions, maybe your image of a hero in her heart will be gone. Louis reminded. Chapter 295. Hopefully Scott will come around. He has nothing to lose by compromising at this moment. At most, freedom is restricted. But if you fight. Perhaps in his daughter's mind, his heroic image will be completely destroyed. But if I don't fight, then anyone can bully me. Scott growled. The ex-wife's husband, and Cross flashed through my mind. He doesn't want to be a weak person anymore. In the video, he is submissive, but in real life, he wants to punch hard. If you can't protect my daughter, then you are no longer a hero. Scott is confident. Let all the power in your body surge out. See this scene. The Hulk and Nick Fury know. This world, from now on, will undergo tremendous changes. In that case, let's fight. Nick Fury finished. Take out a belt. Now he can finally experience that power. 178. Kamen Rider Kilbus, Hulk Chicken Charm. At this moment. The prison, which had long been reduced to ruins, smelled of gunpowder smoke. When Scott said this, the Hulk and Nick Fury have assumed a fighting stance. They knew Scott's jolting fruit was no joke. On the contrary, the strength is extremely terrifying. Just raising your hand can cause the sky to collapse and the earth to shatter. How dare they underestimate him? I saw the Hulk taking out the chicken charm. And Nick Fury also took out the night belt. Be ready for a fight at any time, but they still chose to try to save the situation before fighting. Scott, think about it. If you really do it, you will be wanted all over the world. I guess you don't want your daughter to see you like this, right? Your daughter has always regarded you as hero. Yeah. Scott, calm down. It's not just Nick Fury who's persuading. Lewis on the side was also persuading. But Scott couldn't calm down. I don't know if it's because of the Zensin fruit or something else. There has always been an unknown fire in his heart. Obviously he has done so many good things. Why are you always ostracized and looked down upon? Why? I'm a hero. He felt that he needed to be brave again. Just like myself in the video. So what? If it's his idol Hawkeye, why don't you give him a punch without hesitation? What does he have to worry about? Anyway, my daughter knows that she must be a hero, a superhero for her sake. Click, click, click. Scott's endless energy surged out of his body. Suddenly, huge spider web cracks appeared one after another throughout the space. Even the sky was not spared. Then the whole earth shook violently, as if a magnitude 10 earthquake was coming, swallowing up everything around him instantly. Even the agents and the like were not spared and disappeared amidst the screams. See the scene. Nick Fury's eyes were cold. You can feel his anger in it. Click. Nick Fury didn't hesitate. The bright red spider-like prop was directly inserted into the groove of the belt, and a mechanical sound suddenly sounded. Kilboo. Spider. Are you ready? When the first mechanical sound sounded point, Nick Fury even held his hand tightly on the handle and began to spin. Spider. Spider. Kill the spider. When the second mechanical sound sounded point, a huge spider web formed in front of Nick Fury and then wrapped it into bright red armor, transforming into Kamen Rider Kilbus. It is covered with bright red color from top to bottom, like a deadly poisonous spider, and there are also huge spider legs on the back, which looks scary and arrogant. Boy, I will let you know the price of impulsiveness, Nick Fury said coldly. Under the influence of this drive, he already regarded Scott in the distance as a dead man. The Hulk on the side also let out an earth-shattering roar, and the muscles on his body became tighter and more powerful in an instant, as if one punch could dismantle the entire building instantly. The smell of gunpowder smoke is getting stronger and stronger, but on the other side, unknowingly, Cassie is looking at the dimensional platform. There was also an eager look on her cute face. She knows my father is about to succeed. You're about to become a superhero. Then no one would dare to speak ill of her father in front of her, and she's proud too. So proud of her daddy. So I continued watching the video. Looking forward to it. Video continues when the police received the report. Scott's ex-wife's husband hurried home without saying a word. And when you arrive at your doorstep, he and his colleagues got out of the car in a hurry, leaving Scott alone in the car. Hey, untie me. Let me deal with that guy. I had a premonition that something would happen to my daughter. Scott is no more nervous than these people, but now his hands are tightly cuffed. It made him even more anxious. Fortunately, he squirmed in time, put on the helmet, and was able to shrink and be freed. Zero ask for flowers. The scene changes. Room interior. A familiar wasp suit appeared in the shot and followed his gaze. A cute little girl is sitting on the bed obediently. But she is very brave. If it were any other child, he would have burst into tears, but she didn't. Ah, you a monster. Do I look like a monster? Cross chuckled. If not for finding Scott and getting revenge, he wouldn't hold a child hostage either. But now he has no choice. I want to find my daddy. I want to find your father too. When Kathy roared, Cross hugged Cassie directly. Just wait for Scott to get the news and rush over. Then we have Cassie as a bargaining chip. Killing him takes only a matter of minutes. Chapter 296. But at this moment, whoosh, Scott suddenly appears. Although this was expected by Cross, but it surprised her daughter Kathy. And asked, Dad, is that you? Hi, Dow. When Scott said this, Cassie smiled knowingly. When she heard this nickname, she knew that it was her father who came to save her. Immediately I was no longer afraid. Because she knows that her father will definitely defeat the monster. It's better to find someone as big as you to fight. Scott didn't hesitate. As he spoke, he took out a miniature frisbee from his body. It hit Cross instantly. And shrink at the same time. Cassie saw this. The big eyes are full of curiosity. Although she didn't know where her father and the monster had gone. But she noticed that her toy train seemed to be moving. The camera also followed her gaze. I saw Scott and Cross engaged in a jelly bean battle. At the same time, Scott in real life also started fighting. Factory 179. Scott's sacrifice. Boom 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 boom. Toy trains roar by. At this time, video continues when Cross and Scott have shrunk. Viewers who were watching the video also saw that the camera immediately followed the shrunken Scott, landed not far from the toy train, and ran straight into the gaps in the carpet. Where have you been, little one? And Cross on the other side. Then he climbed onto the front of the toy train and looked around, trying to find Scott. After all, he knew. Although his fighting skills may not be as good as Scott's, but because his Hornet suit has a laser, my attack power is much stronger than Scott's, and in this open area, it is also able to give full play to its own advantages. Found it. Cross's eyes lit up. The weapon 657 behind him fired several laser beams towards Scott in the distance. Boom. A shocking explosion sounded. The laser instantly flashed across the sky and struck the ground. But Scott moved incredibly quickly. Was not attacked in any way. Instead, he responded loudly, "It's not just me." Finished. In the screen. Densely packed ants followed his steps and ran forward. In the blink of an eye, we arrived at the toy train. Although Cross shot down and after Ant. But know how united ants are. After a while, Cross was entangled, buying Scott a lot of time. Boom boom boom. Shocking explosions sounded one after another. Even though Cross was constantly fighting with the ants, the time was extremely short. He flew directly into the air and roared at Scott angrily, "You're humiliating me, Scott." That's right. Cross now feels like Scott is humiliating him. Instead of fighting in person, he directed these mindless ants to attack him. If it's not humiliating him, what is it? So he's going to make Scott pay. Escape and attack. Scott and Cross were moving frantically around Cass's room. Everywhere he went there was fire. The lasers scattered in all directions and caused great noise, which brought a great visual impact to the audience watching the video. But when the camera zooms out. When looking at it with Cass's eyes, but he found that the fierce battle just now was like sparks from a short circuit in Cass's eyes. This huge contrast made everyone sigh even more. The battle in this microscopic world. Very good. Very good. The author must be a genius. The contrast is so great. Yes, the battle scenes that are so shocking in the microscopic world are so insignificant in the real world, which is a bit interesting. But it seems that Scott can't successfully defeat Cross at all. He still needs to be more powerful. Even in the wasp suit, not only can it fly, but it can also shoot lasers. I suddenly want the wasp suit. I guess Scott might be a little hung up, although everyone lamented this contrast. But I was more worried. That's right. Judging from the video. The gap between the wasp suit and the Ant-Man suit has been clearly demonstrated. But at this moment. Cross suddenly got bigger. He couldn't bear it anymore. Leave Scott alone. Go straight to Cassie. Although the ex-wife's husband arrived in time. But Cross still can't be stopped. The background music suddenly became tight and urgent. The nerves of countless people were tense in an instant. He couldn't help but fix his eyes on Scott. This guy became a superhero for his daughter. Can you stop him? No, Scott shouted quickly. Jumped directly into the air. He planned to use his reduced advantage to directly enter the interior of the wasp suit to destroy the system. But letting him pull was like pulling. Can't even open it. That's titanium, you idiot. Cross cursed angrily. Didn't take Scott seriously at all. He even punched the enlarged Scott to the ground. See this scene. People's hearts are so cold. Even Hank Pym and Hope, who were watching the video, couldn't help but become nervous. It's just that their nervousness is different from others. Others were nervous because they were worried that Scott wouldn't be able to save Cassie. And Hank Pym and Hope are worried about Scott doing something stupid. No. When Hank Pym saw Scott shrinking again in the video, his voice was filled with despair. Familiar scenes flashed through his mind. Chapter 297. It made his whole body tremble. Only seen in the video. Scott didn't hesitate. He pressed the button on the belt directly. Shrunk down to the molecular level. At the same time, a translucent image of the first generation wasp appeared on the screen. Scott and Hank Pym's wife entered the inside of the line at the same time. Destroying the components one after another. Stop the cross missile in an instant. And Cross is even worse. Because the particles were broken by Scott. It also shrank in an instant and disappeared in place. Silence. Speechless. When people in the universe see this scene. They all froze in place. They never expected it. It wasn't just Hank Pym's wife who died like this, and Scott, who they had been questioning, chose to sacrifice himself in order to save her daughter. Although he stopped Cross and prevented the possible world turmoil, he can be called a superhero. But people prefer to call him a daughter's superhero. He is a qualified father. Scott actually chose to sacrifice. He is a bit beyond my imagination. Although I was very dismissive of him at first, it goes without saying that he is indeed a superhero. He is also a superhero for my daughter, who is 1.3 years old. Well, what a shame. Hank Pym's wife got into that field, and now Scott has too. That's wrong. In the previous video, didn't Hank Pym find his wife? And Scott obviously survived. You mean Scott can survive at this time? Originally, people were in sorrow. But when they think back to the previous videos, remember Scott is not dead at all. Can't help but look forward to it. Scott, how did he come back? This is what Hank Pym and Hope want to know the most. Finally, it's time for the reveal. The father and daughter, who were being guarded by S.H.I.E.L.D., held each other's hands tightly. Looking forward to it. 180. The Avengers assembled. Scott survived. I didn't expect this guy to actually do the same thing as the first generation Wasp. It's a bit unbelievable. Yes, although he doesn't look like a superhero, it is undeniable that once he stops Cross, he will prevent a world from being turbulent. What's more, he is also Cass's superhero. At this time, Tony Stark's attitude was somewhat opposite to his previous attitude. Even started to admire Scott. As for why, of course it was Scott's actions that struck a chord with him. Once upon a time. In his own letterboard video. He saw his future self and Pepper having a lovely daughter, and she also said it herself. She loved herself 3,000 times. Although I haven't reached that point with Peepo yet. But he already had the consciousness of being a father in his heart. Even feel proud. He wants it for his future daughter. Make this world a safer and better place. And Scott's behavior of saving his daughter and sacrificing himself also won his respect as a superhero, and also won his respect as a father. Scott in his heart, already a superhero. Sure enough. 09. I knew Ant-Man would not disappoint the bugs. He is really impressive. It's just a pity if he shrinks to the molecular level, he will be unable to come back like the Wasp. Peter Parker was excited at first. Then comes the sadness. It felt as painful as watching Hope say goodbye to herself in the zombie world. But at this moment. Wanda on the side said, "Have you forgotten that Scott appeared later both in the Civil War and in the future, so he will definitely survive for his daughter." Wanda felt very sympathetic to Scott. At the same time, he looked at Vision aside. How could she not want a child? And she thinks as a parent. For children, there are endless possibilities. So she knew that Scott would never die like this. What's more, the previous video also proves this point. Here this Peter Parker's eyes lit up. His eyes were bright and clear. Yes, then Mr. Scott should be able to survive that field. If I meet a real person, I would really like to get to know him. The real person? I'm afraid you won't be able to see him. He is fighting the Hulk and the director. But at this moment. A voice came from behind. All members of the Avengers looked behind in confusion. Coulson walked in. His face was solemn. Then he placed a tablet on the table and continued, "Perhaps Thanos hasn't come yet, and the Civil War has already begun." The words just fell. Everyone saw the tablet. Video footage came in from Hulk's side. It looks like it's ready to start. What's going on? I thought there wouldn't be another Civil War between us. Wait a minute. Are you sure this is Scott? Please, I was very optimistic about him just now. Isn't he going to get carried away just because he thinks he can defeat Falcon in the future? Tony Stark is a little confused. He never expected it. It was supposed to be him and Captain America who started the Civil War, but Scott has already started this guy. Have you become so brave now? Could it be that he became floating after watching himself defeat the Falcon in the video? No, Mr. Stark, don't forget, the reward Scott received is similar to the reward that the blonde girl received. If you activate it at will, the world will fall apart. Coulson reminded. And everyone heard it. I also remembered it immediately. Scott's choice that surprised them all. The Zensin fruit. Shock. Fruit. Damn it. I remember the power of that reward clearly. It seems that someone needs a lesson. Now we don't have time to waste on Civil War. Thanos may invade the Earth with his army at any time. Tony Stark's anxiety attack strikes again. Since the video showed where the 6 gems were. He was worried about Thanos coming to Earth. Now what Scott did. In his eyes, no doubt it made him very angry. It even feels a bit irrational. So he got up angrily. Just leave. And the same goes for other superheroes. Prepare to stop this Civil War. Avengers, assemble. Captain America said solemnly. He also took them away from here. Even though these superheroes are gone. The video on the Dimension platform continues. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 298. Dad, where are you? Cass's Words rang out point, but the video picture point, but it shows an extremely tiny structure like a cell model, even shrinking and shrinking. See this scene point, people know it's not like these structures are shrinking anymore point, but Scott's body is constantly shrinking. The world is spinning point, the streamer flickers, countless tiny structures flashed by scene after scene point. Finally, it was fixed in a space like a rhombus, it's dark and trance-like here point. Everyone watching the video felt dizzy point. I even feel that I have forgotten time and space point. Fortunately, many people responded in time point. I couldn't help but sigh point. They will feel this way when watching the video point, not to mention Scott, wandering and lonely point. The background music stopped abruptly point. Ant-Man just floated quietly point, slowly closed his eyes, but at this moment point he heard a voice point. It felt familiar to him, but he couldn't remember it. Cassie. 660 sudden. Scott opened his eyes, frantically pressing the enlargement button point, but there is no response at all point. He was anxious, he could only disobey what Hank Pym once warned him point. He directly took out the enlarged disc, stuffed it into the controller, and pressed the button under the expectant eyes of countless people. The background music sounded like a hero coming on stage point. The camera moves from the quantum realm to Cassie's room point. I saw the place where Scott disappeared just now point. A shockwave was set off point. It's like going back in time, coming together. Sudden, Scott's figure appeared and landed steadily on the ground. Dad, Cassie shouted excitedly and happily point. He hugged Scott tightly point. Then he continued, I really love you so much. I love you so much too. Scott's heart was filled with the joy of surviving the disaster, hugged Cassie tightly point. At this time point the ending song plays. A picture is frozen in this scene point. People who were watching the video also breathed a sigh of relief point. Really point, Scott ultimately survived point. He is a superhero point. He is also his daughter's superhero. Just when people were having heated discussions, what they don't know yet is Scott, as in the video, made the opposite decision. Point 181. Scott fights one against her. Sure enough, this guy really survived the quantum realm. And he actually survived through this method. At this time point inside the supervision room of SHIELD's secret base point, Hank Pym held Hope's right hand tightly point, very excited. He knew that Scott would survive the quantum realm, but I couldn't think of anything point. This guy actually survived through this method. It immediately brought him endless inspiration point. I even want to start my own experiments right away point. Try to save your wife from the quantum realm as soon as possible. And Hope didn't he think so, just in her mind point. But I vaguely remember the tragedy of the last video. But what if my mother is really infected with the quantum virus and turns into a zombie? At this moment point when Hope said these words, like a bucket of cold water poured on Hank Pym's head, immediately reminded of the last video point, because he went to the quantum realm to find his wife point and brought quantum viruses into the real world point, and because of Ant-Man's ability to shrink point, infecting Avengers members as a result, the entire Earth was engulfed by the zombie army point. Even Thanos, who possesses 5 gems, was not spared. It can be said without exaggeration point, the follow-up may not only include the Earth point, the entire universe may be affected point. After all, wouldn't the zombie version of Thanos with 5 gems be invincible without the obstruction of a superhero? Even if Spider-Man Peter Parker has the Mind Stone point, the chance of winning is extremely small, basically nothing point. So now Hank Pym is in an extremely confusing situation. After all, he suppressed his longing and love. Even if he had the hope of entering the quantum realm, he did not choose to create it point, or openly defy the entire world and even the universe, resolutely create and go to the quantum realm. He really doesn't know Hope. Look at Scott in the video. He chose to sacrifice himself in order to save the world. How about your mother? If there was a way to save her, and she didn't choose to save her, it would be a bit unfair to her. Hank Pym's heart was always towards his wife after all point, and Hope heard this. I also know how much my father misses my mother, but in her eyes he is also half a superhero point. Maybe I have to take responsibility for the world. However, just as she was about to speak, she wanted her father to speak slowly point. Sudden point, the alarm sounds. There was the sound of footsteps shaking outside point, like something big happened point. The father and daughter were shocked point. They have never seen it before point. There are times when SHIELD is in such a panic. Then he turned his attention to Agent Coloside point. Want to know what happened? Maybe you should tell me what happened. It's Nothing. It's just that your future son-in-law is a little short-tempered right now. The Avengers have already been dispatched. Agent. Cult East. The father and daughter heard this. Chapter 299. He also frowned. Future son-in-law. Could it be that she was talking about Scott? Scott? What on earth did he do to cause such a big commotion? Hank Pym said bitterly. As for the word son-in-law, it seems to be acquiescence. Hope, on the other hand, glared at Agent Cole with resentment. But I was also extremely shocked. How could this little and cause such a big storm? Scott, you're going to regret your decision. The other side. Nick Fury, who had completed his transformation, suddenly felt confident. The first time he transformed into Kamen Rider Killabs, I haven't experienced much of his power yet, so I watched the video. And now I can finally feel its power. It also made his old bones feel excited, and the Hulk on the side is even more so. Regret? No, I will never regret my decision again. What I want to do now is to protect my daughter. I want anyone to be afraid of me when they see me. This way they won't dare to touch me. Daughter, Scott roared. Anger has made him lose his mind. Then the endless power in his body surged out, and he suddenly swung it towards the ground. Before the fist came, a very strong shock wave was set off, cracking the surrounding space with a cracking sound. Boom. Earth-shattering explosions resounded through the sky. When Scott's right hand suddenly hit the ground, the force that exploded directly shook the ground into a huge pit and formed huge cracks like a spider web, setting off a sky-high wave of sand and dust. The noise caused was extremely terrifying, and the huge cracks suddenly moved like a local snake, and with lightning speed, they came to Nick Fury's feet in a flash of lightning. Humph, at this level, it can't hurt me, Nick Fury snorted. Do not know why. After transforming into Kamen Rider Killbus, I have a kind of mysterious self-confidence in myself. And he can even feel that his strength is terrifying and astonishing. The moment the crack reached his feet, there were bursts of red after images behind him, and they came to Scott in an instant. At the same time, he concentrated all his power, wangs, on his right fist, and then swung it towards him. Boom. The dull impact sound was earth-shattering. Nick Fury's right fist suddenly collided with Scott's right fist that had reacted in time. Countless scarlet energy ripples washed away, and a strong shock wave erupted, cutting them like a blade. A huge crack was cut into the ground between the two of them, and at the same time, there were ripples of airwaves in circles, picking up countless gravel and dust, and sweeping them in all directions, creating a huge noise that was seen by countless people. What a shock. The Hulk in the distance was shocked when he saw this scene. The desire to fight suddenly increased. He had not thought of it. Scott's strength. It's also interesting. So he suddenly slapped his chest. Make a roar like a wild beast, running towards Scott with huge steps. 182. Fourth. If Thor is not Wallachite this time. When Scott and others were fighting. The uninformed viewers on the dimensional platform were still expressing their emotions while listening to the ending song. I even feel like I haven't finished it yet. They never expected it. Scott, who was disliked by so many people at first, a reversal has also occurred. Became a superhero. But they know. The story of this universe has almost been told. What they want to know is the next dimension of the universe. What will happen again? Scott finally became a hero. Among the entire Avengers, it seems that only Black Widow, Hawkeye and Falcon have no relevant growth videos. It seems so. Among the three of them, only Black Widow and Falcon have a hidden video, but they are sacrificed when they appear. No one knows what their past is. Hey, it seems that the story of superheroes in our universe has been told almost enough. I always feel a bit reluctant to leave. Without this video of the new multiverse, I might not dare to continue watching. One less thing to watch. Yes, I can only thank the author for showing us such a good video. Looking forward to the next multiverse video 660. At this time everyone in the universe was talking about it. Express your feelings. Although everyone can be a superhero. But in their eyes only this group of people will remain in memory forever. You might even feel it. Even with the addition of new heroes, can't shake this group of superheroes. This group of superheroes who fight against Thanos and go back to the past to change the future have their place in their hearts. That's why their rise. Watch a superhero Inventory video point there will be one less video to look forward to, but while everyone was discussing point the prominent scrolling subtitles also appeared on the screen, and man's inventory is over. The next video will start in half an hour. The fourth multiverse. If Thor stops being warlike. Thor is no longer warlike. At this time point the sighing audience widened their eyes stare at the scrolling subtitles. They never thought of it. Next multiverse video point it's actually about Thor, but that's not what shocked them the most. What shocked them the most was, Thor is no longer warlike. You need to know from the beginning of the ranking video point. When they first saw Thor I just think this guy is a tough guy. While being extremely warlike, his strength is also extremely terrifying. Now you tell me point Thor is no longer warlike. How can this be? Thor is no longer warlike. How is this possible? You know, that guy is the Prince of Asgard, and his hands will be stained with the blood of countless enemies. Yes, in the previous video, the thunder and lightning, the hard to defeat neutron star, and the storm battle axe, you told me that he is not militant? How is that possible? That's right. Thor is my favorite superhero. How could he not be militant? Wait, it's really possible. Have you forgotten that in the previous Thor inventory video, Thor became a fat man because he failed to stop Thanos? He did lose his desire to fight at that time. Holy crap. That makes sense. Could it be that in another universe, Thor is a fat man? I remember clearly that there are many versions of Loki, and Thor might be just like him. Fat man? That fat man? Interesting. The god of thunder is going to be publicly executed by the author again. Hahaha. Looking forward to it. Wow, I didn't expect that another universe is about the fat Thor. Maybe the current Thor will faint in the toilet from crying. I feel sorry for him for a second. At this moment point the universe exploded. Points do not know why. Point about fat Thor everyone seemed to have been given a shot of chicken blood. Point the discussion can't stop. After all, this is the most contrasting aspect they have seen in previous videos. Who would have thought at that time that a muscular man would turn into a sloppy fat man? So this topic immediately became popular in the universe. Point there are even people out there guessing what will happen in another dimensional universe. Point the whole universe burst into laughter as for Thor at this time. He was standing in the main hall, looking at the dimensional platform with a confused expression. Point it felt like I had done something bad inside. Point a bunch of false ones. Dog. Author. You and I have nothing to do with each other. Chapter 300. React to point the god of thunder roared. His lungs are about to explode now. He never expected it. Point the next dimension of the universe is actually about yourself. And watching the conversation on the dimensional platform. Point he even pointed at the sloppy and fat version of himself in the previous video. This made him want to find a crack in the ground and crawl in. He didn't want to be publicly executed for the second time. This is also the reason why he is so angry with the author, but he couldn't stop the author from releasing the video. This is very angry. Hahaha. I didn't expect that you would be here today too. My good brother, Loki, laughed happily at the side. Point how could he be unhappy when Thor saw so many versions of himself before? Point he also smiled happily. Point therefore, Loki, who had always held grudges, laughed without hesitation at this moment. Point it made Thor's face burn. Impossible. It's absolutely impossible for me to become a fat man again. Maybe I will be gentle and strong in that world. After all, he only said not to be wary. Haha, not being belligerent means that you don't like fighting. Maybe in another world, you will like something else. So stop defending yourself. Loki crossed his arms in front of his chest. Point lift your chin slightly. He looked at Thor with an overlooking look. Point this time. Point he was finally able to express his anger. Cool. Even looking forward to it in my heart. Point in prayer the author would be embarrassed if he could make Thor better than himself in the entire universe. By the time. Point my good brother, you have no reason to laugh at me. Loki's thoughts are wonderful. Point very beautiful. Point I even feel confident that my thinking is in the right direction. Point. So he turned his attention to the dimensional platform. Point anyway, the answer will be revealed in half an hour. Point 183. Party Prince. That's enough. Scott, I understand how you feel. Scott, you know, I was praising you just now. You are one of the few people who win that I respect. Scott, your daughter is still waiting for you. We can't continue the civil war like before. Thanos may still be waiting for us somewhere. At this moment point on top of the ruins the Avengers finally arrived point, and they also successfully prevented Nick Fury's Hulk from fighting Scott point. Although the battle didn't last long point, but it is extremely destructive point. The huge open space was devastated point, even as if it was hit by a huge meteorite. A huge crater appeared point. If they hadn't arrived in time point, perhaps their battle will spread to distant residential areas, no matter how well they take measures by then point. The media fishing boat will definitely not let them go, although the current international situation appears calm on the surface point, but there is a surging undercurrent in the mainland point. Once the handle is obtained point these superheroes from their Avengers, maybe it will be difficult in the future. This is what they never want to see. Did I really do something wrong? Scott was very confused now point seeing the superheroes he admired very much standing in front of him. They all turned their attention to him point. He even felt like he was dreaming point, falling into deep self-doubt point. Is it really wrong to do this? If you have gained great power and cannot use it, then what is the use of having this power? Will his daughter be protected? This is what he wants to know most. I don't understand. If we can't use the power we get, wouldn't this power be wasted? Scott demanded point. He obtained the shock fruit point. You can destroy the world with just a raise of your hand point. Iron Man has obtained the future notes and can significantly guide the direction of the future point and blah 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 point. They are all extremely powerful props, but with all this power, why should we be afraid of fishing boats and these little mortals who are jealous of their power? Wouldn't it be better to use force to intimidate? That way no one would dare to touch his precious daughter, and no one would continue to mock and look down on him. Scott, don't forget, we are superheroes, and the things we carry make us understand what is right and what is wrong. As the pajama baby said, if we have the ability, if you do nothing, then when something happens, the responsibility lies with you point. And if you have power, and instead of doing anything, you use it to intimidate, then you have to ask yourself whether you are worthy of the title of superhero. Tony Stark takes a step forward point. Even if Captain America on the side wants to stop him point, afraid that Scott would suddenly go berserk point. Even if he's wearing a steel suit point, it is difficult to survive the power of the earthquake fruit point. But Tony Stark didn't back down point, still moving forward point. He used to be a playboy, an arrogant, and a narcissist point. But after watching so many videos, his definition of a superhero point, it is also becoming more and more enlightened point. That's why he had the confidence to talk to Scott like this. And Scott heard this. I was also speechless for a moment point. He didn't expect that point. Tony Stark, an arrogant man, could actually say such a thing point. In comparison point, he was a little ashamed point. It seems that he is the only one who does not realize the meaning of superheroes, so he didn't say much point. Eventually he was brought back to S.H.I.E.L.D. by Nick Fury and others, and he was also the first guy to mobilize the entire Avengers. Looking at Scott being taken away point, all the Avengers members were lost in thought point. This incident also gave them a wake-up call point. The more powerful the rewards they get point, some ordinary people will also become more and more afraid of them, just like Scott, who suddenly starts to run into a rage as soon as his brain twitches. If not for the timely control of Nick Fury and the Hulk point and the remoteness of the place point, if it was like the previous Hulk video, destroying the entire street in minutes, then the people's resentment and fear must be far greater than their admiration and trust. Next, we have to think carefully about what happens between our superheroes. I just hope there won't be another civil war. Zero ask for flowers. Tony Stark sighed softly point. He immediately followed and left. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.